Hello, everybody, and welcome to Show Us, Don't Tell Us. My name is Ira Robinson, and I wanted to thank you guys for tuning in tonight. I've been asked to kind of produce things a little bit here for the folks because they don't have a mixer available to them at the moment, so that's all good. I want to go ahead and bring in everybody, though. We've got Papa Bear, as always. Hello, Papa Bear.
Hello, Ira. How are you?
Doing well tonight, I think. At least so far, so good. We also have Barry Skills. Hello, Skills.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking care of business, Ira.
You betcha. I'll let you guys go ahead and take things over and introduce everybody and everything from there. Go for it.
It's all you, Papa.
Well, I guess that's my cue, huh? Well, I'm up here in this little town in Maine doing a live remote from behind Dunkin' Donuts. So if I get interrupted, you're going to know what's going down. We'll all do it all live. You've been through once already, but, next time I might decide to stop and say hello. Anyway, we've got Rene Powers and Carol Keihn. Hello, ladies. How are you?
Hi.
Hi there. I'm fine.
Yeah, we're doing good tonight.
Good.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Papa.
Is that Dana?
Papa Bear, that you?
Yeah, it is. It's Dana, baby.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I had a number on there. I was, just flashed on to me, which was the wrong number. It was off. It was, instead of 3937, it said 3927. And it said it's not in service.
Man, welcome
to
Fort
Everett. That a little odd.
God love you, Dana. Anyways, and Dana, you're familiar with Rene, and Carol's on here as well. Carol, you don't know Dana. Carol, that's Dana, and Dana's an awesome guy on the East Coast, and there you have it.
Okay, all right, so we've done the introductions. Yeah, we're all on the same subject. We're on the same, you might say we're on the same frequency tonight. Yeah, I've been working on this area for, I don't know, the past 2-3 weeks or so. Not non-stop, it seems, so it happens to be the right subject for me.
Yeah, but you're a digger. I mean, once something is brought up, you just keep digging.
Oh, yeah, I do. I go for the roots. Put it that way. Yeah.
Well, Dana and I, it was nice to meet you, Dana, and, collaborating on that travel document was rather interesting and fun, and I'm thank you for your time in assisting there, too, because that was, it's nice to see so many of us becoming literate to at least the foundation of what we need to be doing.
Well, the key of it is becoming literate is one thing, but putting it into action.
Yep.
And that's what counts right now, because there's so many. I know many people that are learning a lot, but they don't want to do anything with it. They're too afraid.
Well, they're afraid, and that's, I got to tell you, the one thing that really, and Carol and I have been at this a long time, and my journey into the private side started probably about a year after we started our show, I think, Carol, and I remember Carol used to we'd have conversations, and I can just remember her telling me, "Be careful with that stuff." And it was kind of like it was almost like we were talking about some kind of street drug,
Right.
And,
exactly.
and then the more I got into talking to, like, Anthony Williams, he's the one who really sat me down and said, "You can't be afraid. You cannot do this and be afraid." He said, "You have protection. You have to believe in it." And he did. He looked at me and he said, "Do you believe you're free?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And he said, "Well, then act like it."
Yeah. And then you realize when you put it in action, then they back down. You realize that the lion has a big roar, but it has no teeth.
Well, it has handcuffs and guns. It does have handcuffs and guns. So, they may not.
See, Dana's a Bible guy, okay? I mean, he started right into the Bible pretty well. And once you start correlating this with the Bible and you start seeing different things, now that's what prompted him to dig. I mean, I confess, if it wasn't for me, Dana would have never got into this.
All right, what we're currently missing right out of the gate, guys and gals, is that the audience is still not quite sure what we're speaking about, okay?
All right, so you got to bring up the speed.
Yep.
Okay. Public and private. Okay, Dana, this is your thing. Go ahead.
All right. Well, what can I say about public and private? What we all have to understand is the most important thing to realize is that the Supreme Court has dealt with this area already, and they said all corporations are foreclosed from creating and attaining parity with the tangible. And when you listen to that, I knew this all for many, many years, and it didn't all sink in until I realized it was public and private. Corporations are public, and the tangible is private. So they are foreclosed from creating an attaining parity with the private. What is the private? Well, it's the living man. It's that simple. And then once you know that and you separate the two, you got to not only know, you have to know your standing and declare your jurisdiction, and you got to stand on it because they're going to try to trick you into contracting with them. That's exactly what it is. And you cannot allow them to dissuade you from the area that you're walking on, which is the right path of truth. And don't let them trick you into walking onto their path, which is going to lead us all down to tons of destruction. It's that simple. And that's the public. Okay. Their job is to, their job is to try to create, how can I say this, imaginary money on these birth trusts that we have, known as Sedicate trusts and so forth, and they truck us into contracting, and they create this imaginary funds out of these things, and when we cooperate, they get their way. When we don't cooperate, then they get nothing. I had a court case where that's exactly what happened in the end. They got nothing.
Well, and to simplify that, and when people ask me about it, Carol and I, the one thing that we found was with her research, Carol's brilliant delving into the cases. She can see things that it's just a gift she has. And what we started finding was that there had to be a reason that these shadow things were going on, and how were they performing, and we knew it all was tied into money. So the more, and I'm going to say money because when we say fictitious, those who don't know what we're talking about really get confused. So So we're just gonna speak tonight so that everybody can listen, and those who are on the same path, who already recognize that money is not the paper we're using right now, that it's gold and silver, you get that. But for the terms of what we're going to be using tonight, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to simplify it. First of all, there's the public. The public is the business side. It's a very brilliant platform that is a business side, and it's called Born and Birth. When you were born unto your mother under the law, the natural law, your naked little body was born unto your mother, and you were born unto your family. And what happened is that at that same time, under this brilliant, I call it brilliant because I really do think it is a brilliant business platform, except they forgot to tell us about it, was that birth certificate. The birth certificate has to do with the legal fiction. It's just like going to the Secretary of State and filing for a business. You go in and you file, Joe Smith Plumbing, LLC. Well, that's what the birth certificate is. It is the business, but it is the United States Incorporated business attached to your identity, and yet you don't know it's separate. So your parents, your mother and father, without knowing it, literally signed the title over to the state and the government for you. And those, again, listening that are up to speed know we don't really have a government. We have a corporation, and a corporation cannot stand as a government, a sovereign government. So basically what happens is as you're growing, this business entity they've created is making a lot of money for them. But they found ways to use it through the court, called bonds and warrants and liens, that they then take and access that account. But what's even more ironic is moronic is that as you age and you start to realize that the prison system gets involved here, and Carol's going to be able to speak more to this because she knows this part of it, but the prison system, what it is they use the living man as standing in the place of that birth certificate, so they have a body to put in a bed in the jail. And what happens is you literally are traded like a slave. You go on the market for futures income. This is why when you get a 10-year to 20-year sentence and they say mandatory 8, whoever is trading on that bond through your birth certificate and through the created securities that are international, they know that for at least 8 years they're going to trade on that bond. That's how funds are made. That's how it's created. And that's as simple as I can get it. So when we come into this world now where people are recognizing that, wait a minute, public and private. On the private side, you don't have a Social Security number. Your public side does. Your Social Security number, again, think business. A business gets an EIN number. Well, Social Security number is your business EIN number, basically. It's not, but that's how simple it is. It's a business entity. And it's for tax purposes and for business purposes. We don't know that that's separate from us, and we are supposed to be benefiting from that. We are supposed to have our car payments paid, our house payments, our utilities, our food. Everything we need to survive and live is supposed to be provided for through this brilliant foundation of a business. But what's happened is the greed took over. And we have a part of our society that is a very limited higher echelons that doesn't need to have this much greed, but they figured out how to enslave us indefinitely in their eyes. But through the entrapment into court and into the system, through these warrants and these liens and everything in debtor's prison, basically is what it is, people have woken up because their family members have been kidnapped. Literally, and people sit in courts and watch these judges make things up, ignore the truth, and we now have a system where the attorneys, who by the 13th Amendment on the original Constitution have, this was an amendment done so that we wouldn't have attorneys sitting on benches or in public office. So what's happened now is the attorneys have taken everything over, this brilliant business platform they hijacked right out from underneath us. And instead of saying, you know what, guys, we can survive and we can do this business, but you don't really have to participate in going to jail and everything else. This whole platform was very simple, but they bastardized it. So,
there is a Titles of Nobility clause in Article 1, Section 10 also. But I think we have a caller. Ira, do we have a caller?
There's one that's tried to call in, but I hadn't added it.
Tom is the 541?
Yeah, I hadn't added it. They were trying to call in, but I wasn't sure if they were going to be one of your folks or not.
Tom is the cowboy of the cowboy and the lady, and he was going to come on and do. He's been really involved in, obviously in Oregon where he is. He and I have been doing a lot of writing, and he has just become very involved in learning about the private side.
Gotcha. So if he calls back in, I'll add him in then.
Awesome. But what I would love to kind of segue over to, because this is really where it starts hitting home to people, is when Carol explained just briefly about how this is used against us and how it attaches to children and even to fictitious. There may not even really be someone there. They create entities. So anyhow, Carol, you know what I'm talking about here. I would love to hear you explain to them a little bit about the prison system and that.
Very good.
I don't know. The prison systems I don't think it's a brilliant system myself. I don't think it's a brilliant system because this is the deal. These people are taking virtual utility bill money and paying the car payment money. It's all virtual. It's all make-believe. And it's actually back in Moses. I think Moses was supposed to deliver the went into the land of Egypt. He was supposed to deliver them out of slavery. It's the same system.
Right.
So when you go and get a loan for the car, and this is part of the problem. They're slaves to debt because they want the new car, they want the new house. Go for it. When you go get that loan, you're giving up your tax information, and that EIN is an employee identification number. So you are participating in a system that enslaves people. And when you go to the private side to get remedy, you're still participating in a system that enslaves people. So these are children, too, because this is what they do. When you go to get a loan for a house or for a car, they want your tax information for a couple of years past. They get your children's Social Security number. The local police chief or the person in charge of traffic tickets has an agreement, and what they do is they'll write tickets, and they don't check at the IRS level or anywhere for a valid name or a valid birth date. All they need is the last 5 of a valid, not, and what I mean by that, Social Security number is one that's not in the death master. And there they create the identities, and they keep that under the minor account. So when the child, like let's say I have a grandson that was 4, he had 97 warrants under the social the government issued to him, and 47 to 49 were felonies. Well, that's worth to state actors, bad state actors, and the prison system, that's worth $100,000 to $400,000 each per year. And so when that child that was then 4 turns 18, he's going to get arrested for something, and they might drop 3 of the charges. But where does everybody think they drop them to? Into midair? Oh, no. They run them under the minor accounts, and right now they're running immigrant children under fake identities all over our country. I don't want any part of that kind of a system. That is slavery.
Yes, there is.
Well, and that's not actually, let me back up here. That's not what I am saying is brilliant. What I am saying is the actual business model of the birth certificate. It in itself was brilliant, but the bastardizing of it is what you're talking about. They took
now,
it,
the IRS.
put it in a system that then it not only enslaved, but it's now human trafficking on paper.
Well, that's what they did in Egypt, though. That's what they did in Egypt, though, is what I'm saying. I wasn't saying anything about what you're saying. I don't know anything about the private side. That's just how I feel, and that's why I do the research, and I go into their private side system, and I can tell what they're doing. And we are all, that special government employees under Hillary Clinton. Now, listen, the SGE email that was disclosed, my foot. There's a program called an SGE on the computer, and what they do, these computer techs go in and make us all special government employees, and we're giving our very life under a gratuitous gift to the United States. They don't want to tell us that now, do they?
One thing to keep in mind, too, is that under executive order, Obama signed into place saying that anybody, basically at any time, either the president or any of the people that he designates can tell somebody that is in the United States that they have to work without any compensation. So they could go to somebody that's skilled.
Looking at that side, I watched your video, your recording.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yep. That's I brought that out a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, it's crazy, but that is slavery. When you're forced to work with no compensation against your will, that's slavery. That's the very definition of it.
Exactly.
Violation of international law, too.
Exactly.
And and that's like our men sitting in Oregon and Nevada in jail. The thing that they're prisoners of war. Their defense is using Civil War acts and Civil War cases. And what it is interesting is under the 14th Amendment, of which they are proceeding, we are employees. We are U.S. citizen employees, slaves to the system. So this all makes perfect sense as to how they're railroading people, because unless you're going to stand, and a business cannot stand, only a living man or woman. So Therefore, if you're not going to stand as the living man or woman, and you're going to go into that system and not say you have no jurisdiction, because they do not have jurisdiction over the man or woman, a corporation cannot go after a man or woman. Just like the government saying, like the United States of America versus, how can the United States of America, what happened where's the victim? There is no victim. They're creating fictitious cases. And as Carol says, then she can go back and this is, again, Anthony. When Anthony was in jail in Hawaii, Carol had gone in and found information that could have helped him. But see, a lot of people didn't know what the research that we were involved in and how Carol did it was.
Rene helped me. So we both did it, Rene, and she's very good at the private side and a remedy, because something needs to be found that is not participating, because this is the deal. Whenever there's parentheses and brackets in work in all the communications and all the court cases, and everybody says, well, I hear people say, that's not part of the contract. It is too. It's a compensation clause, and the parentheses and the brackets are not in the search logic on the public side. So what they're doing on the private side is that's how they funnel the funds through. That's how Beyonce and Jay-Z and Madonna get paid 0.5% on every single contract on these multi-state notes. And it's running through India through the Nice Convention, a copyright convention. And it's running straight out of the state of Indiana through the excise department, where I found a link called TAN. I thought it was a tanning bed tax. It took me to a bank in India. It took me to a bank in India when I first found these warrants under my grandson. Well, the IRS lady told me about the warrants under the grandson. But these things are true, and like here in Indiana, Wayne County, Indiana is tied straight to the criminal warrant database of the IRS in Wayne County, Michigan, which is right in Detroit, the bankrupt city. And right now there's a new treasury set up in Detroit, folks. It just happened. They're sending out memos to all the assessors that if you get any checks from us, just please void them and send them back. I mean, it's right in front of everybody's face, but everybody's panicking and trying to, how do I get out of the system? How do I get to the other side? I say we just go collect our paycheck, maybe. We just
have to say we do. We just have to say, you know,
I do think you're on.
How do you collect your paycheck? That's the question.
Well, I'm not sure, but I do think that the fraud upon the court I talked about earlier. If you go in and people are saying, well, the courts aren't real. Okay, I know that. So why don't send somebody go into their not real courts and say, I'm doing a fraud upon the court, and part of the fraud upon the court is fraud.
Yeah.
The court is fraudulent. This forum is fraudulent. Hey, I want to go to people's court. I'd stand a better chance there. If it's a corporation, why can't we start our own corporation? Why can't we start our own court where we actually distribute what it was supposed to be in the first place?
Well, and that's where common law grand juries come in, the people's grand juries. That's what this is all about, and that's what, for many, many years, people have been at this. And Rod Class actually did.
Is there one in Indiana, Rene?
Yes. Yes.
Where is my common law court? Where is my common law court in Indiana?
It's actually a people's grand jury. When we say common law courts, it's a little confusing. Common law is the basis of the law and natural law, but the actual court itself, or the actual process itself, is the people's grand juries. And what was I going to say? There was a point I was going to make. I'm sorry, I just had some timers. Anyhow, but that's the side that we're talking about right now is Rod Class went in, and if you Google Rod Class and beats the federal charges, he actually went in and proved in 2012 that there are no courts, there are no state, it's all corporations. He proved that. So what Carol just said, Rod Class did.
Well, they can't have monopoly on a corporation, so we need to get these courthouses up. Now, I'm not talking about going in and renting their space. I'm talking about our own.
Well, and that's what they're in the process of right now. That's actually going on, and it's very exciting. But see, the thing is, when people say, why can't you? Well, again, it goes back to those who have the guns and the authority in their mind, even though it's not real authority. There is a perceived authority because of what we've been fed for so long. So, and as people wake up to the fact that what they believe is not real,
Rene,
that's how we're winning.
Real quick, Dana, go ahead.
I'm going to interrupt you here. No, I'm sitting here. I just told them that I was doing a live feed, and I just wanted you guys to hear what was going on, that's all. And I'm sitting in a parking lot, and there's an officer. What's your name, sir?
What's your name?
My name is Barry. What's your name, sir?
Your last?
I'm sorry.
What's your last name?
Well, I have a right to know who you are. I mean, there are imposters, so I'd
Listen
like
to
to know
this.
who
This
you
is
are.
live.
I have a right to know who you are because you're in a private park.
My name is Barry
What's your last name?
Bixby.
Thank you.
Okay, and your name is?
Officer Valerian.
Officer Valerian. Do you have a badge number, sir?
Just a minute.
Listen to this,
Did he
guys.
just tell you just have a good night?
Hold on. No. Hold on.
No.
Oh,
He's
hold
checking. He knows they don't have the registration. I have a marker on it, but there's no registration. So he wants my license to registration.
You're hearing this live. You're hearing this live. Hang in there.
Yeah, let's make sure we can hear everything that's going on, guys.
Yeah, this is interesting.
And you see, I'm a traveler. Okay, I'm not doing anything commercial. I'm not a driver.
You're not
I'm a
for
traveler.
hire. You're not for hire.
For hire.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Come on,
Yeah.
it's in 3-inch letters on a tailgate. You know, I mean, they're not going to miss that. If you want,
You know what you could also ask him is tell him you're on air right now on a radio show and ask him if he would like to come on with us.
Oh, I was muted for a little bit while you were talking. You were talking, and I was muted, and I told him I was on air, and that I had my programmer in South Carolina, or I'm sorry, where are you, Ira?
Indiana.
I'm in Indiana.
Indiana. All right, my programmer in Indiana. And this is the only place I could really sit and do a live feed and really not be too bothered. But I'm homeless, you know, and this is about it. He asked me if I was moving my truck. I said, well, you're going to be leaving, right? I said, well, I might be. He says, well, then you'll be driving it. Well, I won't be driving it. But
Oh, no, you'll be traveling.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is he still there?
He's probably checking on his stuff.
Oh, good Lord. Here we go on air. You can't even sit and have a private phone conversation.
Yeah, we got a number of ears listening to this. Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Well,
This is
yeah,
live.
but the thing is, the interesting thing is he has none of my information. I haven't given him anything.
Well, you don't have
we
to.
don't have to.
According, you don't have to. You gave him a name. You don't have to give him any kind of a commercial driver's license or any of that. And what he's going to be upset about is because he can't check your plate because they got a database on all the plates that they get people to get issued on their cars.
Well, I've got that printed on my registration that I printed up.
Let's make sure too when the officer comes back to talk to him that we're all as quiet as we can be to make sure we hear everything that's going on.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's another,
Let us know,
another one
Papa.
here. We've got,
there's many ears and wit.
yeah, it's too bad I can't show you this through the camera.
Yeah, really.
This guy's not a either.
You got a lot of witnesses here.
I've got a whole show going.
There's multiple thousands that are listening right now, so multiple thousands of witnesses going on.
How many thousands? Oh, here comes the third one. It's the sheriff. All right.
Well, you want to be peaceful.
Yeah.
And you do know this, Barry, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I've got
all right,
to
I'm
be peaceful.
making sure because even though we're all listening on air, I want you to be safe, and it's not safe when they've got guns on their hips.
Yep.
No, it's not. That's what we were just talking about. He who has the gun is the one who, and you're just, we always tell everybody you don't argue and you do it under duress, but you just do the best you can and peacefully as you can.
And you don't have to answer a bunch of questions about what you're doing, really, because really they can and will use everything you say against them, and you're not obligated to answer the questions unless they're doing a custodial arrest. And once they pull you over while you're driving, it can be a custodial arrest. But if you're just sitting there, it really can't be a custodial detainment. That's my understanding of their code.
Just let us know when he's coming
And
back.
you know what? The fact is, you pulled over into that lot because you're live on air. You cannot be traveling while you're listening and speaking on air that you're and participating in a class. So if they want to know, say, actually, officer, this is really good timing. We've been discussing traveling, and I'm on air right now. Would you be willing to give me your business card so I can share who you are for this class that we're on? And literally, that's as simple as it gets because that's what you're doing. You're not going anywhere. You're on air. You've got 3 hours. You've got to sit somewhere.
Hold on, Rene.
You're sitting privately.
Do you live locally?
I'm homeless.
But you've been living here, or?
Well, I've been living in Hebron for 20 years.
In Hebron?
Yeah, but I'm homeless now. Right.
Do you have a date of birth?
I do, yeah.
Would you mind giving it to me?
May 2058.
5/20/58?
Yeah. I don't want to give you any more information. I don't have to give you anything that might incriminate me, am I right? So I prefer not to give you anything. I mean, if you want to see proof of ownership, I'll give you that. All right? But we're just talking about this, traveling and such,
Right.
and
You do
things
you
like
know
that.
that in order to go from one place to another in a vehicle, that it's supposed to be registered, and you need a driver's license, and you should have insurance.
I
You have all those.
I understand that traveling is a right, and I can do it in my automobile, and it's non-commercial,
I understand.
so it doesn't fall into commercial guidelines.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, I do have a registration made up. I mean, if you'd like to see it, I'd be more than happy to show it to you. I have an ID. I'd be more than happy to show you that if you'd like to see it. He's walking away.
What's that bullshit all about?
And by the way, folks, none of us are truly homeless. Even if you have no home, you are not homeless. You live on the land, and you don't owe him that either. We have to realize that we have a right to live and breathe. And when they say, "Where do you live?" I always tell them, "I don't live, I reside."
Right.
I live on the I'm on, and the night, and he sounds like he's being okay, but
I live where I go.
Rene, hey, Barry,
Yeah.
don't say anything else to them unless they ask you something. And if they start to try to get inside your car and stuff, you tell them you do not consent. And then it may be that they're going to do something. They'll try to get you. They may try to get you and say you're vagrant because you don't have a home. So don't volunteer anything else to them.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
And you gave him your name and your birthday, and you offered that registration that's yours and your ID. That's your. Yeah. You can do what you want, but I'm just trying to help you out here with what I've seen and what I've had happen to me. Right. And anything you say can and will be used against you, and they'll lie to you because they can.
Right.
And as they say, don't offer what they don't ask.
Right. Okay. I can deal with that.
Huh.
Well, he already gave him, according to Texas rule and Indiana rule, he gave him his name and his birthday, and those are the two things that they ask for. If you don't have a commercial driver's license, you don't have to have it. Traveling in your automobile is absolutely right.
Right, but my bond is no longer attachable. My title's been claimed, so they can't attach that now. I also have a whole harmless indemnity agreement. This stuff is all going through the court. So I've got all the papers.
Got everything. You've got everything that's needed. He hasn't even looked at anything because he knows right now he has no jurisdiction to, Barry. He has no jurisdiction to look. Yeah, he knows. He'll probably be... Yeah.
Holy shit. That's horrible.
Oh, no.
Yeah. God,
well, this is what they do, though.
You got to be kidding me.
Really? This happened to Wayne, though, too. They ended up with like six officers. And all you have to do is, like you already said, I am not for hire. I am doing nothing wrong. I've committed no crime.
They're saying it's a private. Did you hear them say it was a private parking lot? Did somebody call them? Do you know, or did they just happen to be driving by?
No, they drive by. He saw me sitting here a couple hours.
Yeah, he's been driving by all night.
Right, Misky. This is small town stuff. I mean, you got 3 towns that are all together, plus the county. They're all right here. And I'm looking at 4 cars right now, and I'm thinking there's one from each town and one from the county. So they're all getting together and hashing everything over, like good old boys do. They're all from the area.
Yeah, they have to. They have to. And then, and if worse comes to worse, you just, ask for both.
What's their, can you see anybody's driver's license number or car number?
I see, the sheriff, I got his plate number is 921. And then I see the Norway, he's 2175. It's hard to tell because they're all like face headlights.
It's a private parking lot. Has anybody complained? Anybody that owns that parking lot say they don't want you there? So all they had to do is let you know.
That's what I know. You guys want to go ahead and carry on, and when they get done with their little conversation at the back of my truck, I'll let you know.
I think you just need to stay on air with us.
Yeah, that would be wise.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, just on air. You know, it's just where you're sitting right now. The adrenaline just kind of kicks in right now. But like Carol says, if you see anything identifiable on those cars that they're driving, if you see any license plates or anything, any numbers, identifiers, usually the cars will have a number on them.
Yep.
Well, yeah.
You know, what are you seeing? Are you seeing like county of what?
Well, I see the Oxford County Sheriff, and his plate number is 921. And I see Norway Police. He's driving a little Ford SUV. His plate's number 2175. And then the Oxford cop that just pulled in, it looks like his plate number is 911. He's driving a Crown Victoria.
Yeah.
And the other one's driving another Ford SUV. And I can't tell what town he's from. It's 391.
All right,
Yes, sir.
Again?
Yes, sir.
Okay, here's the thing.
Yeah.
I did check your date of birth and your license.
Yeah.
Your come back valid.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah.
This truck is not legally registered. Okay. So I'm not going to get any argument over it.
Okay. All right.
But you cannot take this on the road.
Okay.
If you take this on the road, I will stop you, or one of these gentlemen probably will stop you.
Okay.
Okay? You cannot move it from here.
Very good.
So you need to find a way to get where you're going without taking this truck somewhere.
All right.
Is that something you can do?
That's something. Yeah, I mean, I can work on. Yeah. I got enough people. I know enough people around here.
All right. And then what to the truck afterwards? Because it'll have to be either towed or brought somewhere.
We'll find out when it happens. I can't tell you. I'm not. I can't look into the future. But either way, it'll be moved.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, sir.
Very good.
So you've been advised, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Bastard.
Of course, they're out of line.
So,
definitely out of order.
Right now, whatever.
Well, they have no lawful ground. What they're doing is unlawful.
Okay.
You're traveling. You have a right to travel. They can't get in the way of that. That's an arrest. Right down to, in essence, you're under arrest.
Yeah.
That's a false arrest.
Yeah.
If they're keeping you from your ability to travel, that's an arrest. And they become liable in court.
That's the thing. That's the thing. They're not.
You also have to think about this. Right now, they had four or five vehicles roll up on there. If there was any true reason to take him, they would have. What they just did now was what is very typical. It's the bravado, save face, about face and lead.
Yep.
Now, if in fact you do go somewhere, he will stop you. He will do bravado. So it's your best to avoid him at this time. But if they actually have real cause, they will take you. But this was no real cause. You were not driving. You were not operating. You were parked and you were on air. And that's the last thing they want, is to have you on a radio show and you just gave all their car numbers up. To have them have hauled you off, that would have been a huge liability. It's already liability enough what they did. But he saved face for himself, allowed himself to puff out his chest at you.
It's noted that they've interfered with your right to travel. So, like, go into the future and have to see what happens when you leave.
That plate number 391, that was a Norway cop.
So right now, if you need the audio archive of this for any kind of evidence or anything along those lines, it's here. We got audio evidence, and we'll have it on video too. So,
all right. And,
goodness gracious, you guys! It's never a dull moment with freedom, is it?
Nope.
Okay, 2175. That's South Terrace. So there was a South Terrace cop, a Norway cop, an Oxford cop, and an Oxford County Sheriff. Did I tell you that one from each one would be out here?
Yep.
Didn't I say that? And that's what it was, one from each one. I'm telling you.
Okay, tell me this. Which one came to your window and denied giving you his information? You asked for his badge number and he wouldn't give it to you. Which?
Yep.
That's the South Paris guy, plate 2175.
There you go. That's the one who just told you that he didn't give
you got his name, right? Didn't we get his name?
Yeah, it's on the audio. I'm not sure what his name was.
Yes, but he didn't give his badge number, and you asked for it. So the good news is he did threaten you with taking your automobile and towing it, and yet he did not give up his badge number. So there you have something already. So, it's all of this stuff matters, all of it. And they to even roll up on you like that and intimidate you with multiple automobiles. The other thing is Carol and I did a show with the DeVarys a couple of years ago on surveillance and abuse of running plates and driver's licenses. And the interesting thing was Mrs. DeVary, the reason they ended up, they had a huge lawsuit with the federal government on unlawful surveillance. She had been on a case, and her picture ended up on the front of the newspaper, and she was on a surveillance case. And the day that newspaper hit, her driver's license had been run, her identity had been run 300 times across the United States. And that's how they caught him, because they have no right, unless there's a crime being committed or thinking there may be, they have no right to just run those plates.
Let me talk about this for a minute, Rene.
Yeah.
In our city, I got pulled over about 2 months ago, and the same thing happened to me. The guy wouldn't give me, he asked for my, he goes, you got your ID, you know that you aren't wearing a seatbelt. And I said, well, I'm called Carol. My mother calls me Carol. And he goes, oh, and kind of grinned. And I said, and he goes, you're not wearing your seatbelt. That's obvious. I said, I'm not wearing a bra either. Do you want to? I said, I can show you. And I was lifting up my shirt. He's like, no, ma'am, no, ma'am, no, ma'am. And he said, what is your name? I said, I'm Carol from the family Isaacs. He goes, I can take your truck. I can do this. I said, go ahead. I said, I'm pretty sure it's a misdemeanor or felony one for you to even ask me for that state-issued ID. That's their property. Are you trying to get me to participate in some kind of fraud? And I said, why don't you just scan my license plate? Because I knew from that show we did that he could just scan that license plate that my husband puts on his new truck. And he says, I'm going to do that. And I said, while you're at it, you better call your captain. And you better call the sheriff. And so he went and was gone for 10 minutes, and they know me here. I was banned from the jail because I wanted to look at mugshots. I was told by the sheriff I was banned from the jail. I couldn't look at mugshots. You were banned from my facility because they know, and I know about these ghost prisoners. Now, these police are the one that are issuing the tickets on the ghost prisoners through the traffic division. So he came back in 10 minutes. He gave me a ticket, but he handed me a yellow sheet of paper. It didn't have my name on it. It was a ticket to my truck. It was a ticket to the truck for not wearing a seatbelt. I am not kidding. He didn't have me sign anything. He's like, if there's a problem or anything, you can go to the doctor. I said, I'm not going to the doctor for anything. And I drove off without my seatbelt. I drove off, and I came home. Now, we found out that we had a car wreck issued April 28, 2015, just by accident, again, for an at-fault accident under our driver's license. Well, these police departments are actually participating in identity theft every time they get that state government-issued ID. And we're already committing felony. Yep. So you did the right thing there with what you did. You did really well. The thing is when you travel quickly and get to where you're going, and you need to call me at home, Barry, because I need to know about the situation you're in. I had no idea.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm still fighting. I'm whacking the kneecaps, and we'll see what brings them down.
Well, Papa, like I told you ahead of time, hold on real quick, Carol, excuse me. Like I told you, Papa, ahead of time, I smelled something stinky, and I told you that ahead of time. I says, that Calvary's going to be around, man, and sure enough, there you have it. Go ahead.
Once again, I prove I'm the sacrificial lamb.
You always got to be causing trouble, Papa. Listen, we do need to hit a break here real quick. Why don't we go ahead and do that since things are calmed down now, and we can go ahead and hit the break. It'll just be a few minutes long, and then we can get right back into everything. How's that sound to you guys?
That sounds cool.
Sounds good.
All right, so you guys are listening to Show Us, Don't Tell Us. There was almost some history being made here on air, turning out very interesting. Make sure you guys stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few minutes, and stick around. Open Eyes Network now airs a live simulcast on YouTube. Our YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/Open Eyes Network, features not just our live content, but other videos as well, and is always active. So now you can tune in many different ways. Open Eyes Network shows air Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live. Be sure to visit OpenEyesNetwork.com to find easy-to-use links to get to all of the places that you want to listen to our shows. And don't forget, all of our shows will now be archived as well on YouTube.
There is a better radio show, beyond that which is known to the people. It is a radio show more informative than others, and as timeless as infinity. It is the equilibrium between light and dark, between the sheeple and the paranormal, and it is heard at the base of man's ignorance and at the summit of his knowledge. This is the radio show of imagination, a show we call The Secret Teachings.
Open Eyes is dedicated to finding the truth in all matters. We are not afraid to be politically incorrect or to ask questions. Whether it is the paranormal, government cover-ups, the dark agenda that the puppet masters have in store for us, or aliens and UFOs, nothing remains hidden. Listen to Open Eyes, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on LateNightInTheMidlands.com or OpenEyesNetwork.com. Open hearts, open minds, open eyes. Ben Franklin said, "If you do the same thing tomorrow as you did today, you're going to get the same tomorrow as you got today." Changing the world starts with you, and changing you starts with changing the way you think. Late Night in the Midlands can help. Listen to all of our shows at LateNightInTheMidlands.com, because things really do need to change.
We believe in the truth of the following statements. All people are created equal, and they are created with certain rights no one should ever take, including life, liberty, and trying to do what makes them happy. To make sure people have these rights, we create government that gets its power from the people being governed. And if any form of government starts destroying these rights, it's also their right to alter it or do away with it, and then to install new government, which they feel is the most likely to give them safety and happiness. We're not saying that governments that have been in existence for some time should be changed or tossed aside lightly on a whim. In fact, experience shows us that people are more likely to suffer under evil government as long as they can stand it, rather than to stand up and do something. But when they're abused for a long time, and the things that belong to them are increasingly taken away for the same reasons, and benefiting the same tightly knit group of people who rule with absolute political power, then it's the people's right and their duty to throw off that kind of government and to find new guardians of their future.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Show Us, Don't Tell Us. My name is Ira Robinson. We're being joined tonight by the normals who normally host the show. I'm just here producing things. So, Papa, Barry, guys, go ahead for it.
Welcome back, guys. It's been so far an extremely interesting night. Thank God. It's been really different. A first time for L&M Radio, I'll tell you right now. And like I mentioned to Papa earlier, I says it was a toss-up. I says, hey, Papa, I says, if Ira can do it, let him run the show, because I got a sneaky suspicion the Cavalry's going to show up and shut that program down. However, that didn't unfold to a certain extent, even though Ira had taken over the show. But there was a situation, and it's all you, Papa.
But hey, we got it all done in the first hour. That was awesome.
Yeah, awesome for us listening.
Yeah, really. Wow, he's handling this very well.
I think so, too.
My thought was...
they left me here sitting in the parking lot, right? I must have done something right.
Yeah, indeed.
Right?
My thought...
You did a lot right.
When you said there was...
They did chase you out. Go ahead, Ira.
Well, I was just going to say, when you said that there was 4 that showed up, my thought is there's no need for 4 cops to show up for some guy sitting in a truck unless they're looking for trouble, And notice as soon as you said that you were on the radio, that you had listeners that were listening in, they kind of backed away and got a little bit more cooperative,
Yeah. Oh, I even told him, I say, this is what we're talking about on our show tonight. Traveling. Yeah.
Traveling in action. It's a schooling, I tell you.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
So, before we hit the break there, I think, was it Rene or was it Carol that was speaking about a topic, and I wanted to let time go for more of that.
Carol did the court searching.
Yes.
Yeah, well, the traffic division, the traffic divisions, people actually think that they're peace officers, but they're hired, here in Indiana anyway, they're hired by the city council. So in Fort Wayne or New Haven, it would be the council there, and here in Richmond, it would be the council. The councils, the city, are their bosses. And they actually answer to the mayor, which is the mayor of the local municipality answers. The mayor is under the worshipful houses of livery. He's a mayor. He works for the city of England. Now, municipalities are what collects the money and sends it off to England, because that's the banking side of this 3 crown city thing we got going on here, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. We got the military in Washington, D.C., and London, England's the finance, and then, of course, the Vatican. So they're ruling this whole thing, and that's how it breaks down to basically the municipality or the county is the federal arm of the government. That's what my research and people helping me, my research buddies and I have found out. So, and I've talked to people over in England, David Hawkins and Abel Danger's sidekick he's on live stream. So when these police officers come in and they've got Barry's name that he gave, he's going to be in the database like the chick DeBauer was 300 times, because they run it into, and Anthony Williams had this, they ran it into, they took his name and accused him of something, produced fingerprints. The fingerprints he found were produced when he was approximately 7 days old. These were grown man fingerprints that they were sent into Hawaii to have him extradited to Georgia. And so he shared with me something. there were 30 different aliases on him with different socials and everything. They knew full well they weren't getting the right guy.
Yeah, they knew darn well. He was on the stand, and their the FBI's fingerprint specialist was on there. And he questioned, and he said, "Are you telling me that these are my fingerprints?" And they said, "Yeah." And he showed him the card, and he said, "Right here." And at what birth date does it? What date does it say up here? And he stopped, and he said, "Well, Your Honor, if those were my fingerprints, I'd have had to have been 17 days old at that time." And guess what? They couldn't proceed, but yet they didn't release him either.
No, he was in solitary confinement, and that's when I told Rene, I said, there's this guy in Hawaii, they got him in that jail locked away, and he couldn't, and this is part of the identity theft, because that song, You Are Your Own Grandpa, is really true, because they're taking us back to bloodlines or like names based on those slave papers, and that's what they are. They're slave papers.
I got a great example for you guys with me. When I was 20 years old and getting ready to get married, I had to have a little bit of backgrounding done to get the marriage license and all that kind of stuff. And they basically, one of the weird things that came up is that there was a debt that was owed as well as a warrant that was out for the arrest of somebody that had, basically, it was the same name as me. It was Ira E. Robinson. But the guy was 54 years old and had a completely different Social Security number, but it was similar enough. It was only one number different from my own. But same name, different Social Security number, but only by one digit. And basically, they were trying to claim that I was this guy. And I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm 20 years old. Do I even look close to a 54-year-old to you? You know, it was just insane what I had to go through with all of that. So I'm with you guys. I know what you're talking about with this.
Well, here in Indiana, especially, you get into docs popping up around Allen County. You're not able to get a lot of the records because you got to go in because they're running the trusts up through there, and they'll delete the trust as soon as they get through pilfering them. They're running them through. I'll just say what I know. Here in town, it was being ran through a William and Betty Lou Cross. There was 2,950 properties. Well, in the middle of the night one night, my computer started going off. And what had happened was I'd copied the hyperlinks from the DocsPop, D-O-X-P-O-P system. And so all those trusts that were running under my daughter and grandchildren's stolen identities were being deleted in the middle of the night in Allen County. I called up and talked to the Allen County clerk of courts. She said, well, you'll have to come up here and look at, and then I called in the land records too. You'll have to come up here and look at those. They're not available online. So they have certain counties in each state under this new electronic case management filing plan, which is the avenue in the federal district courts, the ECF. If you go on pacer.com, you will see where it says username, login name, I found this out today, and client number. Now, I'm sitting in court with this young lady, my daughter, and the judge looks at the attorney, one of the new attorneys they brought in, and says, draw up that order. So the next day, the order read, client through counsel moves the court for this order, whatever they said. So that tells me that the client is the court, right? And they're running it through the electronic case management filing system. They're busted on that. That's a fact.
I bet you.
And we know that they're using that. The real interesting thing here is when you start looking into the electronic filings to the county records, is that it's a database with software. And one of the systems is right here in Orange County, owned by Orange County, LA, San Bernardino, and San Diego, and it's called Secure, S-E-C-U-R-E, all capital. And that secure system, it was tricky because we thought at first it meant it was a secure system. No, what it means is it's a patented database software. The housed warehouse is Orange County, California. The clients of this database are the attorneys, the court, the debt collectors, the escrow companies, title companies, and the banks. We, the people who believe this is our county records anywhere in the country, are mistaken because we are not their clients. We are not the ones that they cater to. So with all of these fraudulent documents that are going through these counties, through these county recorders electronically, they can backdate them, as Carol can talk about, the buy, sell, buy. They can backdate, forward date. They have blank documents that they record for title and escrow companies, blank documents with recordation numbers. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever gone into a county recorder, if you tried, you or I, to file a blank document, it would not happen. At any given time, there are thousands of them in Orange County, depending on how big your county is. Well, basically what it is this secure system is, now you've got your county board of supervisors who do all the contracting for the county, like Carol was talking about the city. These are all third-party vendors, third-party contractors. So this secure system that's housed in Orange County, that's owned by the 4 big counties in California, it costs a minimum of $100,000 to buy into this system. Then they have to pay yearly fees. They have to pay recording fees. But this system, this database software, is used all across the country. These county recorders are tied into these electronic systems. Well, there's an Orange County, Florida. In Orange County, Florida, I had a gentleman who was one of the whistleblower investigators for the big Goldman Sachs case that just finished. And he told me after we talked, he said, oh my gosh, now it makes sense. He went in to pay a tax bill in Orange County, Florida. They had him write the check to Orange County, California. So what we're trying to explain here is that this electronic recordation system that's used by the courts, by the counties, by the municipalities, all ties in so that they, being all of the banks, debt collectors, sheriff's departments, police departments, county, everybody but the men and women can access those systems. And the sheriff's department and the police departments are tied into electronically your utilities and your municipalities. So when they hit my property with a SWAT team last October, they coordinated it with the electric company and cut my utilities. And this was done in what they pretended to call a peacekeeping, when in reality it was an escort for a cell tower company who had no easement on my property. But how did they coordinate it? Electronically. It included helicopter even. All of this to escort a cell tower company onto my property who had no easement. Why? Right. Because you're talking about a $27 billion a year corporate company who can buy their mobster SWAT teams, who are the bad guys in the sheriff's and police department.
Well, what's at stake here? What's at stake here, though? How are they doing this? On the ghost paper derivatives of the paper that they tied to us at birth.
Correct.
So they're actually taking, and they're like vampires, they're sucking the bloodline. If you think about each of us, we are carrying, the bloodline just goes down and down and down through the parents, the actual bloodlines through the parents, but through specifically they're taking the father's role because they have the mother sign her maiden name on that birth certificate. So you can be married all you want, because I was big on that. I was married. I brought the state into bed with me. I didn't know that, but I was married, got my license and all that to get married. Since when did we need a license to get married? They want in that marriage bed because what they're going to do when you have that child is they're going to have the mother sign the maiden name, takes the father completely out of the role, and daddy government becomes the father. And that father who thinks he has rights, even when he gets custody, let me tell you, under Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton, the conjoined case of the abortions that happened, neither one of those women had abortions. One lady was single. The other lady and man were married, but these 7 Supreme Court justices decided it was up to them to say what we do with our family so that they could get the doctors indemnified so that they could get even more birth certificates on abandoned babies. So It's their IDs that are causing this problem. Their government-issued property, because they can do whatever they want with it. And we're buying into the system by attaching our flesh, blood, bone, spirit, breath to that piece of paper. I don't know how many times in the past somebody would say, "Can I see your ID?" And I handed it to them. I didn't even think about it. Well, hell, I'm not that piece of plastic.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now,
yeah, you can say what do you say? Do you say
procedure.
I'm sorry, Papa. I was just going to say, what do you say to them in that kind of case instead of handing them an ID? What do you say? I'm presenting you by myself?
When I went to the DOJ with Denny Payman down in Kentucky over the candidate ID frauds, that's a totally different story. But Renee's friend and somebody she's worked with closely, he came up here and brought me papers for voter ID fraud in Jackson County. Well, that voter ID fraud, there were no voter IDs on there, but there were candidate ID numbers. So Rene and I looked them up, and they were all tied to Arizona federal prisoners. So Denny Payman had me come down, and I went in with him and some sheriffs, and reportedly some guy with sunglasses on. I thought he was from 60 Minutes. I don't know who he was, but we all went in there, and there was a court reporter and everything. And they called the FBI in to sit in on it. And, I was telling them, I said, all your candidate ID numbers are tied to federal prisoners, unverified illegal immigrants. And I told them about my grandson. And I looked at the guy, Kenneth Taylor was his name, I believe. I'm pretty sure that was the name. So I got his card in there. He said, so I need to see a pattern. I said, well, I don't have any voter ID numbers because you guys wouldn't give them to Denny. And he was a sheriff then of Jackson County, Kentucky. I said, but what I do have is all the candidate ID numbers. And I said, so, and the FBI was shaking his head like the Sullivan nod up and down. And writing like crazy. And I said, so what you got here is some bad state actors collecting federal funds on paper doll juvenile prisoners. And I said, and what you got here is candidates' ID numbers that have been assigned by a judge in Kentucky. He changed the prisoner identification numbers through the prison system, tied them to federal Arizona prisoners that are not verified, so all the candidates are wearing double hats whether they know it or not.
Oh.
Now, this is an elaborate card game being played here. Arizona issues special playing cards for their prisoners in that federal prison, that one in particular. Indiana also issues special decks of cards for their prisoners, or they did up until this got out. These special decks of cards were issued under the Victims' Crime Fund, and so does Florida. And so when they quit the online gambling system, well, by golly, they took the Americans right out of the card game, didn't they?
Yeah.
This is no joke. This is serious business, and I know it, and they know I know it, and that's why they got rid of the playing cards in Indiana. They've had them for a long time.
Well,
if you got paper doll prisoners that don't exist, if you got them based on fake names, they're saying, let's say, and I can say this for a fact, let's say the guy who's in charge of the vacant beds in the prison has the ability to up the bed availability by 50 beds in one night. And those are in the, let's say in the felony part or the capital murder portion of the prison. Well, that's those positions, those beds pay out good money in federal funds, $100,000 to $400,000 per year.
Yes, absolutely. It's a big money making business, to say the least.
So if that guy who's in charge of vacancies is upping the bed count, the guards don't know it, the correction officers don't know it. But let's say a couple of correction officers, that guy calls in one night and they have to go into his system and they find out, hell, there's about 50 more beds than what we thought we had here. What's going on here? That's how they do it. That's how they do it. And this is flat. It's treason. So that they can go. I don't have any faith in them, and I wouldn't go in there for anything. I don't even think that I would call the police for anything at this point because I have no faith in the system anymore because I do see how it's operating. And anybody that's doing this, I don't care how much money they think they need, I wouldn't do that job for anything. I would not. I told the clerk of courts here, she's a Pentecostal lady. She's like, I'll pray for you. I said, you know what, Deborah, you don't need to pray for me. You need to pray for yourself and that little fat man judge upstairs because you guys are going to burn in hellfire for what you're doing to this country. You ought to be ashamed of yourself You're running fake identities under those identities that you stole. You're running children. You're running actual live children through the immigration. Those Mexican boys that are coming from Mexico, we're on the same continent, by the way. We're actually, everybody on Earth is on the land because there's land underneath the water and the sea. They are running these children through those fake identities. And you got to ask yourself what for. You got to ask yourself, if this little bitty boy's got 100 warrants on his head, how much do they have his life insured for? And nobody's doing anything about this. Shame on them. Big time. Big time.
All right. Did we disconnect Rene? Is she still in here? Carol, you know something about court procedure. What about Minnesota Rule 220?
Well, the doing business as?
Well, yeah.
The birth certificate. The birth certificate.
Right. Right, recording that certificate of live birth in the county records and in the registry of deeds.
Renee is still here.
Is she there?
Yeah, Renee is still connected. I'm not sure if she's muted or if she's wanted away for a minute.
Kill me for going off like Adolf Hitler. Sorry about that.
Someone's messing to her because she says she's muted out completely, and it does it every time she talks about secure. You know.
See, and it's not on our end at all. Renee, if you want to disconnect and try to reconnect up to us, maybe it'll solve things. I don't know. It's not on our end.
So Minnesota Rule 220, I don't have my computer in front of me, but I know that that has to do with the live birth certificate, but also under Minnesota, you can do a DBA. And Renee came on. She's the expert on that. But you can do it doing business as, and there's a particular way that you do it when you do it. So I would feel better if she spoke to that. So, yeah.
Okay.
We'll get her back as soon as we can.
They are running. This is. I can say this, and I can't get here in Wayne County, Indiana. The traffic court division, the CEO of that, which was our chief of police, was the database from Michigan. And the warrant database was showing up here in DocsPop for the whole state of Indiana. I found thousands of warrants because they were dropping numbers off the tree, almost like your Social Security number, Ira, that you were talking about was a number off.
Right.
In these electronic systems, there's trees of numbers, so there might be 9 numbers. And what it'll do is it'll drop a digit here and there and replace it, especially zeros, because zeros are not a number. They are a symbol.
Exactly.
They used to use zeros to count sheep in the Doomsday Book, and the first known zero is reportedly from Cambodia. Well, back in the 70s, if people will check out their history, and there's plenty of history on it, they went to year 0 in Cambodia. They killed every lawyer but one. They zeroed out all debt. You got ground zero. You got Indiana, where we changed pi back in 1898.
Yep.
It's sitting on the books. It was a gift to our education department.
Yep.
So this is Operation Zero now, and there is an Operation Zero, and I'm going to do a special. There is an Operation Zero, and it's been stated by many. Where I'm from. Where I live, that's where Jim Jones lived, the Kool-Aid guy or the Guyana guy that took all those children over there. And our chief of police was known as the Doctor of Pain. His name was Dan Metrione. He hung out with Jim Jones. And his specialty was, reportedly, according to what I've read, because you don't see this here locally, they don't brag about this, but he got killed in Uruguay. He was shot. He was kidnapped and shot, but his specialty was taking thin wire and putting it between the teeth and then the genitals of various homeless people to see how long it took them to die of pain, from the pain.
Yep, I remember that. Renee, I think we're connected back with. Renee, can you hear us? Can you speak now?
Yeah, I'm back on.
Great.
Yeah, it all went completely dark after I started talking. I was laughing. I told Barry, I said, gosh, every time we bring up that secure recordation system, something goes haywire.
See, and now you brought it up again. Good job.
Sorry.
Anyways, go ahead, guys. I just wanted to make sure you were actually there with us. So,
we just touched on Minnesota Rule 220. You're familiar with that, right? The certificate of live birth. And what is it that actually does when you record that?
Say that again?
What is it that actually does when you record that certificate of live birth in the Registry of Deeds?
Well, that's you're going to get different answers from different people. I'm after having done every piece of paper imaginable. Dr. Chris Lindsay. Oh my gosh, she and I spent so many months doing everything so that we could literally say we did that. And what I haven't done, she's done, and vice versa. And what we both have come to believe is that we are already living women. The thing that we know is that we know that. You go back in time, and in everything, there's always notice, affidavits, and intent. Intent, affidavits, then notice. And so what I just determined, and this is what she and I came up with in having done all of this ourselves, and there's a couple of things still, coming from this. But remember, this is private. So usually you want to remind people that there's a reason it's called private, and it's not something you discuss on air or everywhere, because that's why it's called the private. But what I can tell you is that in getting your birth certificate and getting it authenticated, that word, I'm sorry, I'm getting tired. But in getting it back and basically saying, I'm of age, I've done my age of majority. When you reach 18, you're supposed to just do some kind of credit to open up your accounts. They don't tell you that. And by the time you're 21, you have 3 years from the time you're 18 to 21, and then they start raping the whole account. But I just say your intent is to be free. You're already living. You don't have to do anything because you already are. So this is what's always funny when people say, well, you have to claim it. Well, okay, but I'm already breathing. So there's already my intent is to be alive and to be living. But I sent notice to the governor, to the secretary, the Secretary of State got all the documents, the county, the sheriffs, the police. Everybody gets notice. You put it in the newspaper, do a 3-week ad. For those who can't afford it, the Craigslist is the same. You can put it in Craigslist. It's free. And just give your intent. And basically at that point, you're done. Because when people say, oh, you have to record it, again, this is my belief. And it all comes down to just how you stand, right, and how you proceed in your day. But that's their records. That's their court of records. And as we've been talking about already, we know they're bastardized. We know they're counterfeit. We know they're full of fraud. That county record, there's other ways of going on record. Again, you can do it through the newspaper. Go and plaster it at anywhere where there's public notice. Because even thinking back to the squires and the days of old, there's always been contracts. From day one, a contract isn't always written. You and I had a contract, well, an implied contract, I think, about doing the show tonight. But it was a one-sided contract until I called in and agreed to do it, correct? That's still a contract, in a sense.
Correct.
So when everybody says you have to go record this, you have to go record that, and right now it's all about probate court, and because this is all about your estate. The bottom line is, we're alive, we're breathing, we are standing. When we say thank you, I am not a U.S. citizen, but I have one. It's called my legal fiction. It has a Social Security number. You can and you will operate, but the two don't mix. You just have to learn that one's a business and one is you.
Okay.
So that's my take on it, because I'm of the like mind that we live under natural law, unalienable rights, and we don't play in their sandbox. But like what happened to you tonight, when they come upon us, they have the guns, they have the manpower, they have the cars. They scare the crap out of you, And it's very easy to sit on this side of the phone and say, you don't need paperwork, you don't need to do this, you already are a living man. Well, that's great, but if you have a driver's license, if you have registration, if you have title to anything, any kind of licensure, you're playing in their sandbox. Right. You're giving them jurisdiction. So I've removed my zip code. I have no address. My property lawful description is the meets and bounds. When someone says, well, how would we get to your house to have an address? When the sheriff asked me that, he says, well, what would you do if you had an emergency? And I said, well, you're making an assumption and a presumption that I would even call you. Yep. Personally, I want to live to see tomorrow. Yep. I won't contract with you ever again. So we have to remove the assumptions and the presumptions. And the only way to do that, to me, is to, and faxes are a wonderful thing. For $10 a month, you can have a fax on your computer.
Right.
The faxes are lawful. Right. So, I autograph everything, VC, my family name properly done with my DBA at CEO doing business as, my all caps name. Yep. I have my registered number out of Minnesota. And correct. So the Minnesota rule basically is what we send with our documents to tell them, you have to recognize these documents. You have to recognize I'm giving you notice that my intent is as the native sovereign. I'm not the legal fiction, but I have the benefit of that.
Okay. Now, let's say I distinguish the two. I separate the public and the private. I do this on paper, I notarize it, and then I record it in the court.
Yeah. You're giving public notice of your private standing.
Right. So this is now binding. This is binding, right?
Hold on. Dana wants to chime in. I know it.
No, I'm listening in right now. I mean, right now you're on an area. I'm just feeding.
All right. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah.
I'll shut up.
Well, you have to remember, public, as Carol said earlier, public is the business side. Now, The other thing is you also want to recognize is that all of these public servants that are congressmen, senators, congressmen especially, there's dual citizenship there. Right. They have dual citizenship. And a lot of people don't know that. So we are dual in essence of one is the U.S. citizenship, which is the business side. The civilian employee, basically, through the 14th Amendment, you're the slave through that. And then there's us here, the ones talking, living, breathing, laughing, standing, who have the benefit of that. And the other thing that I suggest is to send in your rescission of power of attorneys to the IRS and to do an identity theft claim because through the IRS. And they're simple forms. There's 3 forms. 9828, I think it is. I mix up the numbers, but there's three forms. And 2 are for identity, 2 are for power of attorney rescissions, and 1 is for identity theft. And why do you do that? Because anything, like Carol was talking about again, when you go and you get a car loan or you buy a home or anything you've done on credit, you've given them, without knowing it, permission for your intellectual property with your autograph, which means they're accessing your business entity on the back side.
Rene. The Circular 230, Treasury Circular 230, it's 44 pages. It tells how accountants and lawyers are on your back. Anyone you've ever hired or didn't hire is in there behind the scenes doing amendments on those income taxes that you've ever filed.
And that's why what Carol's just saying, you may not know who's on the backside, but you can file these documents and let the IRS know that you have never given unknown consent and that you're rescinding everything. And so, like on my paperwork, I put in my all caps, as the Social Security number. And then I became, as the CEO doing business as, the authorized signator and the one authorized to receive all the documents and anything that would be pertinent to that Social Security number and that name as the representative. So everything else prior was canceled. So there's
a revocation of agent form, too, which is basically the employee, the special government employee they got us under. And then there's a 2848. Those two need to be rescinded. And there are simple forms that got the instructions online. It's a revocation of agency. And then the revocation of power of attorney, but it shows up as a power of attorney form. But in the instructions, it tells you how to revoke all powers of attorney. Now, after you do that, 2848, you're going to want to go back in after they get that, and you're going to want to substitute it with your, and you can do it a couple of ways. But what I'm planning on doing, and I haven't done it yet, is doing it after I'm changing my name. And if anybody's listening on here, I want everybody to go to Google Mirror, because that's what they're doing on the flip side of all the papers, and just draw your own conclusions. But Google Mirror is a very interesting site.
Okay.
Because that's how they print the documents in the first place, backwards. That's how they record records in the first place. They imprint them backwards. So when you see these old-time guys saying, I played Kiss backwards and it had satanic undertones to it. Okay, well, they put it onto the press that way. It went on backwards, like the typesetting. If anybody's ever done newspaper printing, you put everything backwards. It goes on backwards in the first place. It's almost like when Christ was crucified, they said Peter was crucified upside down. Now, a historian said that. I suspect that maybe we were possibly given a bit of information to tell us how they were running the courts back then.
Yeah.
Because they're doing it like an inverse mirrored effect on the back side of everything.
There you go, Dan.
Carol, 2848, is that the form? Somebody in the chat room was questioning.
Yeah, it's IRS 2848.
Just wanted to make sure
and
the numbers.
The other one, 9821 or 88. Wait,
Rene.
There's two forms, and I don't have the other number in front of me, those two forms. You can fax them in. The numbers are right there online too. It tells you where to send them. And then the 14039 is the form for identity theft. And very simple to fill out. But on the two forms for power of attorney, what's really tricky is there's a box 4 and a box 6. And if you check them, you are allowing all previous power of attorneys to continue existing. But the way it's written, you don't catch that at first. It's like trickery of words. So you want to make sure you do not check those boxes, 4 and 6. It's very simple, but that is it's something that everybody gets confused on because of just the way they word it. But if you check, you just don't want to check those boxes, because when you do, you're giving permission for every other power of attorney to still exist. It's just like you're adding one more. You don't want to add one more. You're doing this to cancel out anything known and unknown prior to that date from the time you were born. Not birthed, but born.
Right.
But
now,
the birth date of the number. Right.
Form 8821. Right.
Yeah, and the other one, I can't remember what's the other one.
It might be 8820. It's a revocation of agent, and it's an employment form. It looks like it, but that's how I think they're able to get in and change our status on the IRS side, because they're partners with the Federal Reserve in this system, and I've heard, I forget the guy's name, daggone it, Jet Bay, I think is his name. He's an older guy that worked for the IRS. He said, it's under God, guns, oil, and drugs. You become a well-known drug dealer, and that makes sense with the warrant system, the derivative of the warrant system that I found, Rene, and the fact that they got warrants on all the children that I found. That makes perfect sense to me, that's how they're rehypothecating all of the identities, and they're making money off of paper, just off of nothing. It's just make-believe.
As you call them, paper dolls.
Yeah, paper doll prisoners. And Denny admitted to me that yeah, there's paper doll prisoners. Yeah, there are paper doll prisoners all over the place. Now, the thing that I'm worried about is these children that the immigrants who said, oh, these congressmen, he was talking about how much he can consume, and he's like, how many young men from 14 to 17 do we have now? And he was almost salivating at the mouth, and I thought they're putting these children in prison.
Well, we remember through the geo prison system research we did, and we found the Abraxas juvenile detention centers run under GeoWorld.
Yes.
For anybody listening, look up Abraxas. To use that name for anything attaching it to children is just unbelievably evil. But what these detention centers for the children do is from 11 to 17, they're in there, and they do a reprogramming, much like the LDS Church and the Church of Scientology. There's a complete reprogramming and stages that they put these children through. And basically what they're doing is they're reprogramming them to the ways that they want them to be. And it on the surface would appear to be something that is good. But when you think about the fact that the probation department, your probate court, your probation departments, what others may not recognize is through all of these fake identities, when you have a child who has nobody, who is basically an orphan into these systems, they can take their wards of the state. So basically that state can do a probate and literally probate that child's estate uncontested. And when an estate is uncontested and no one is there to accept it, it goes to the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management. And all of these probate cases that are going on, what we have found since this Oregon case during research, I started this as soon as we realized that the cave there, the Malheur Cave, Freemason owns it. The Freemasons own it. It is the number one cave in the world. People come from all over the world for ceremonies there at this cave. In a town of, at that time I was doing research with less than 4,000 people. So when you realize that judge there, that Judge Grasty, I titled him Judge Nasty right from the beginning because I realized that children and human trafficking on paper had to be occurring here and had to be part of what was being covered up, even though they were talking about the minerals and uranium-1. Well, the thing that's really laying beneath the surface is the children and identities. And the human trafficking on paper goes straight through the probate court, and especially if you have a judge who's tied into the electronic recordation system, who he was in charge of it. He also is the administrator for vital statistics. He's in charge of everything that could create these documents. And remember, electronic recordation, you can backdate, forward date, do anything you want. So you can create birthdays, you can create entities. And Carol and I know, and we have found a database where they're creating these entities and handing them out like candy. So basically it's laundered through to the BLM, and then the BLM, there's grants and foundations created. It all goes back in. Well, we know they're not using it in the land because they're terrible stewards.
Yeah.
And what happens? The biodiversity groups, the eco-terrorists, as we call them, who are getting grants from the federal government, sue the federal government because of some bird with a blue beak somewhere that some cow's stepping on. And it's all a circle of laundered money. It's laundering. And what happens is it's allowing laundering of dirty money from out of the country. So when we start realizing on simple terms, this is like a dryer, how a dryer rotates to clean everything out and dry it out and get all the water out of it.
Yep.
Well, that's what our court system is doing. It's going in circles in a resemblance of drying us out, literally cleaning us out financially and running it back through. So
I've said for years,
it's all dirty money, and it's our children. And Abraxas, by the way, is the devil above the devil. That's what Abraxas is. So who names juvenile detention centers that?
I've said for a lot of years that that's exactly what these people are doing. Is they are looting what was left of the wealth here and sending it overseas, basically. I mean, they're just draining everything completely dry.
It's a brain drain.
Yes.
And if you look it up, look up brain drain, and they're doing the reverse brain drain, what you're talking about. They're taking and making a developing country or a highly developed country to become an underdeveloped country.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. We do need to hit a break here, guys.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
We do need to hit a break here, guys. We're way over on this one, but I wanted to give everybody enough time to get everything out there real quick. So keep in mind what you guys had in your brains there, and don't let them drain away. And we'll be back in just a few minutes. You guys are listening to Show Us, Don't Tell Us.
Thank you, Ira.
You're welcome.
You're right back.
We'll be right back, guys. Stay tuned. Ben Franklin said, "If you do the same thing tomorrow as you did today, you're going to get the same tomorrow as you got today." Changing the world starts with you, and changing you starts with changing the way you think. Late Night in the Midlands can help. Listen to all of our shows at latenightinthemidlands.com, because things really do need to change.
L&M fans and late-nighters around the world, have you captured something on that photo or video of yours? Send in your photos and videos of ghosts, orbs, UFOs, Planet X, or just about anything content-related by submitting them to the Late Night in the Midlands Facebook group or fan page, or you can submit them on Twitter using hashtag L&M Radio. And if you would rather stay anonymous, then email them to us at mv@latenightinthemidlands.com. We will share them at our new fan page on the L&M website and may even ask you to come on air a few minutes and tell us about your photo or video. Late Night in the Midlands. We're building a bridge to the truth and beyond.
The L&M Radio Network and Late Night in the Midlands depends on you, the listener. Without you, there would be no us. So help us continue to bring you the best guests with the best information and subscribe today. Information on becoming an L&M subscriber can be found at the top of latenightinthemidlands.com. Just click the About Subscriptions tab and become part of the family while helping the truth stay alive. And while you're at it, maybe subscriptions aren't for you. A one-time donation helps as well. Click that donate button on the right side of latenightinthemidlands.com and help us help you.
And we are back to Show Us, Don't Tell Us, and we have a whole slew of people here, nice living men and women to join us tonight on Show Us, Don't Tell Us, and go for it, guys.
Yeah, let's quickly, before we go forward, we were talking about the electric recordation system and how Harney County, how the research showed about the probate court and such, and Tom Davis is on, the cowboy of Cowboy and the Lady, with us. Tom, can you started telling us, and it was hard to hear you, but will you explain what happened in Burns, Oregon, with the electronic system?
About 5 years ago, they brought a high-speed cable computer system through Harney County. It came in out of Portland area, and it's all big, huge cables set up with relay stations in between. There's 3 of them between here and Bend. Well, this got set up, and then they got a big relay station here in Burns. And you guys were talking about the recording of the backflow of information and through the computer system and the corruption. And with Steve Grasky being our probate court, it just struck a bell that I wonder if that's why they brought that big cable through this country into Harney County.
Right.
Yeah, it's probably like a Skype switchboard where they pull in everybody's Skype channels into a main, like a mainframe, what are the conductors? It's like something that everything would piggyback off, like it's a main hub.
Yeah, it's one of the main arteries for all of the data flow that goes on. Sort of like a backbone, sort of like the backbone internet connections, basically.
Because you figure in Prineville, 135 miles away, we have Facebook. In the Dalles, 246 miles away, we have Google, a big, huge Google site up there, and that right on the Columbia River. And then we get this big cable coming through Harney County, and with you guys talking tonight, I started piecing all this together. I wonder if that's why the cable came into Harney County and why Steve Grasky is refusing to step down because he's got work to do besides removing papers from the county courthouse that would incriminate him. We've already caught him moving boxes from the courthouse. If this is part of the corruption that he's trying to clean up so nobody sees it.
Yeah, and did you get pictures of that by any chance? Did you get that recorded?
I never got no pictures. We have a gal that works at the courthouse came up and was talking about it, but she never got no pictures because at that time the feds had control of our courthouse and the surrounding area around the courthouse, and they had bodyguards and security inside the courthouse.
Well, it should be easy to find out who the vendors are or if they have an alternative storage. The same thing happened here.
We've got a picture of the vendor truck leaving, and Rene did contact that company.
Good.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, we did a story that showed the picture. We got sent a picture of the van. A gal sent the picture to us, and she said, I think they just came from Burns. And we did a story on it, and I contacted the company. The company would not tell us because they said it was proprietary information due to client privilege. So I figured, well, if they're not telling us, that's basically telling us. Because if they're not,
find out from the county commissioner. Their meetings, Rene, their meeting minutes. If you go down and look at those from the county county commissioners, they will have their vendor information in there, and they better not have had a closed session on this. There may be some talk where you can read between the lines on what they did, and a judge actually to destroy court records. There has to be an order in, or it has to be part of it has to be there a certain amount of years before they can just take and destroy those.
Well, the FBI were destroying documents too, apparently. So people caught, the BLM was. So, excuse me, not the FBI, the BLM. But what we know from all of this is what is so ironic, especially what we're seeing in Oregon, which we're calling Oregon Ground Zero for Agenda 21. Everybody's appointed. The Sheriff Dave Ward was appointed. Grasky got him in. He was appointed before the 30-day waiting period that was supposed to happen after the last sheriff had to back down or step down amongst misconduct. Well, more than misconduct, but we'll call it misconduct for now. Kate Brown, she was appointed. the judge, Anna Brown, on the case against the gentleman. She's also the president of the Bar Association for Oregon. All of these, Boquist, the Senator Boquist out of the 12th District, he actually owns a private military contracting company, and for 2 decades has had quite a few different issues come up legally with his company. Also, his foundation of his company, they have the Black Hawk helicopters in their arsenal. They have, they brag in their bios about being Russian trained, Russian Special Forces training. They travel to foreign countries in order to stop the tyranny by foreign governments, and yet what we are questioning, and we did a story on this, was it last week we did that, Tom, or the week before? But basically asking if they are making so much money on foreign lands protecting other countries from their tyrannical government, what are they doing here using these same contractors to protect a tyrannical government? So it's very interesting as you start getting into this whole story in Oregon and how it ties into Nevada and all of the underground caverns and caves that connect catacomb underground throughout our entire country, catacomb caves that go out to the ocean, Russian military. What's that town, Tom, that has the actual Russian military underground? I can't remember the name of it. Do you remember? I don't hear him.
He might have gotten disconnected. Let me check again here real quick.
Okay, but anyhow, there's so much going on that it gets to the point where you can't make this stuff up. And it sounds like something out of a cartoon or out of a comic book.
But it can all be proven. Yeah. And it's a numbers game, and it can all be proven and tracked. And we have that. We have what we're talking about, what Rene and I have been discussing. We've tracked it, and it's solid research. And the people that should have done something, we've turned it into them. I did before I knew, and so did Rene before we knew we shouldn't trust these people. So they can't say, well, we didn't know. Yeah, they do know. They know that what we have is very credible, and they just can't. I think some of them are even stunned at times. They're like, oh, no, I didn't know that connected here or there.
Yeah.
But the fusion centers are what's connecting them, and it looks like, our governor here, Governor Pence here in Indiana, he did an executive order there on the Gov website for a fusion center in 2013, I believe. Well, what's interesting about that is that fusion center, it ties in all this warrant system I'm talking about. So Allen County is tied directly for sure to Allen County, Pennsylvania.
It absolutely is, yes. Living in Allen County, I know it's absolutely. I know a lot of people that work in the clerk's office here, and they've all told me, yeah, there's definitely a connection that's going on with all of it.
And the David Ward thing, were there 2 David Wards?
Let me explain what happened there. What happened there, and this is my take on it because I was following this, and I had gone on, and Carol's been really good for my research eye. I thought, well, I'm going to go look at bios because on Wikipedia you can create bios. You can go on there. Well, on January 4th and 5th, there was a 5th and 6th. It was 4th and 5th or 5th and 6th. A bio was done the first day on Ammon Bundy and the second day on Dave Ward. And the bio on Ammon Bundy was basic. The one on David Ward was done so that there was a 7-year span missing in his bio. Well, that 7-year span for somebody researching would give you confusion and go, why is there 7 years missing? What are they not wanting to see? Well, in my opinion, that was placed there to give an appearance that something was missing because they had a Dave Ward that was said to have worked for the BLM.
Right.
Now, the BLM Dave Ward was involved in the Hammond case. So what it did was it looked like this was one and the same man. But when I realized that, because one of these gals who does stories had posted it, that Dave Ward was also the Dave Ward that helped take down the Hammonds through the BLM. And I saw that story, I posted it, and then I yanked it back because something told me those 7-year span was done on purpose. And sure enough, I pulled it, I sent a message out saying, guys, something's telling me this is a setup. Don't use this information. So other people started pulling it down, and everywhere I go, I'd say, no, there's 2 different Dave Wards. And there are. I had people from Burns saying, no, there is another Dave Ward. Now, he hasn't ever appeared, but we know he wasn't one and the same. But what happened, what was interesting, is not but a week later, Pete Santilli, of all people, starts going, and he had never seen my information, I know that, and he starts producing this thing about Dave Ward being the BLM guy. Well, of course, it backfired. It was my belief that was a set-up story in order to cause something to say how the people weren't credible in their research. These stupid people will believe anything. Well, it was a set-up story.
One of the things that we know
happens. It could be a ward, and it was in a fake identity tied to somehow to somebody, and it was a 7-year period where, the 7 years that they take before that birth certificate's not claimed by the parents.
Well, that could have been, but in research, what I'm telling you is there are 2 Dave Wards. That 7-year was left out. Dave Ward was in the military. He lived in Harney County. People know him. They've known him all his life. The other Dave Ward that worked for the BLM, people knew of him. They sent me messages. We know that. We know he's not one and the same. And Tom lives there, and he could vouch for the fact that, of these people. So what we realized was this was just a story planted. It was a psyop in an attempt to get a fake story out to cause diversion. And it did.
Which we know happens.
Shut it down.
Which we know happens. I mean, absolutely. And as far as creating realities or creating identities, that's really easy to do. I mean, hell, they have you could go on to Google Play Store or the Apple iStore, whatever that is, and iTunes, whatever. Anyways, you can go to these 2 different app stores, and you can buy an app that will create a virtual boyfriend or girlfriend for you so that you can fake to your family that you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. It will even go so far as to send text messages to you. It will call your phone and leave a voicemail message, on and on and on, so that you can play these for your mom or your dad saying, see, I do have a boyfriend. Stop bothering me. I might get married someday. You know what I mean? If they can do that, if just on a simple basis of buying a stupid app off of the Google Play or Apple Store, and you could do something like that, imagine what else they can do when they have all of this other technology available at their fingertips.
Right.
It'd be dead simple for them to do it.
That's why we have voter fraud. That's why, when Carol traveled to Kentucky and took all that research to show them all the voter fraud and how it was tied into the prisons. I'll never forget, Carol, when you called me and you were just irate and you said that SOB wanted to know why it mattered. Why does it matter I'm tied to a prisoner? Why does it matter I have a prisoner's number?
Well, he said he needed to see a pattern. And I said, I'm showing you a pattern of 2 pages completely full, and every one of them's tied. And I said, the prisoners' names and everything are on here, the actual prisoners. And I said, so the thing is, and Rene, I'm just going to say this, we need to be looking at some accession numbers on things at some point. So they're using these number systems on everything. It ties into everything, and that's how you catch them at this game, because it's just a bunch of numbers. And this is the thing, they can't patent this system because it would show their hand. It would show what the show's about, the public and the private side. And the private side is the parentheses and the brackets because they don't include that in their search logic, so the public can never find out how they funnel in their funds.
Exactly.
Right.
You guys were talking about the Google facilities earlier. I wanted to mention too that Google, not many people know about this, but they have many, many data centers, even just across this country, but all across the world. If you go to do a Google search, for instance, on something, it connects up your own personal data connected to the data center that's closest to you, and it will give you localized results. They have multiples of these. There's, I believe, if I remember correctly, the last I knew, there was about 40 different data centers just in America alone. So each one of these is actually a Google facility that are connected up to the backbone of the internet, and that's how they serve the search results, more personalized versions of them. They're essentially they're mirrors of each other, but they'll do the searches based upon your GPS location on your IP address and your localized information. So when you do a search, that's why if you do a search, for instance, of attorneys or something like that, the first things that pop up is the attorneys that are closest to you. It's doing that based upon the fact that there's a data center that's close to you, and that's what served you the info. So it's not just one data center that Google has. They have many of them.
And, this makes sense because a lot of time when Carol and I research, she will be looking up something local to her that she can't find, but I can from me, because a lot of times things will be blocked. So we search from opposite ends of the country to get the information sometimes that should be easier to obtain close.
That's how it would work. Yep, exactly. And one of the problems too is that Google, they I think it's either next year or it might be 2018 that they're looking to implement this, but they have what they call the well of knowledge. Through all of the different information that's been fed to them over the years, they have accrued what they call their well of knowledge. And if a website or let's say Facebook or YouTube or something along those lines, if it's putting out information that it can compare against its well of knowledge database and say, well, this is false information because it doesn't match up with what we quote unquote know is true, then they will not give the website or the video or whatever the case may be any credence in the search results, and they will appear basically 300 pages in if you're lucky, as opposed to if you were to do a search on some kind of truth thing, for instance, talking about a conspiracy that's happening. If the well of knowledge compares the knowledge and says, well, no, this information is not true because we know, for instance, 9/11 was XXXXX. Oh, this is the official story. If you say anything against that official story, your website or your page in particular there will not show up in the search results because it goes against that well of knowledge.
Oh, they're using their ranking system then, huh?
It's sort of an Uber ranking system, yes. Yeah, but if it doesn't compare to that well of knowledge, if it goes outside of that norm or what they consider to be, quote unquote, the truth, they will not serve it to a searcher in the results.
Well, what's interesting about you saying that is because we know in doing research with these public servants that, like, when you deal with FBI agents or these special agents, usually everything's right on the surface. But if they're in the middle of something, their information that's been on the internet, I have questioned how can they bury anything? Because the FBI and all of them have to be tied into Google, because the only way they could access and change any of the database to remove information for a time frame, say you have Joe Smith, special agent, who's undercover in Oregon, and part of an assassination, and you don't want him to be found, the information is pulled somehow from Facebook, from all of these search engines. They'd have to be tied directly into Google.
Yes, they are.
And into all the Google databases, be able to pull information so that because that's what happened even with Dave Ward. It was almost impossible to find any information about him. The only way I found anything on him when I was doing that search on that bio was that there was one page that hadn't been hidden, and it was through the Oregon State Police and Officers Association. And it was his bio that was put up there, but it was buried. It was hard to find at that time.
They are
So it's
they are very
cool.
capable, very easy to scrub the net of info if they want to. Let me give you guys a little bit of information. Not many people, again, know this either. Google has what they call D-Wave. This is a quantum computer that they use as their feed, basically, their information storage facility. It's run off of what's called the D-Wave computer. It's a quantum computer. So a quantum computer, as opposed to a normal computer does basically everything in ones and zeros, and it's very linear. But a quantum computer is able to do things as 1, as 0, as 1, 0 at the same time, or neither. And it's a very 3D kind of directional thing that it can do. So it can do things searching backwards, forwards, up, down, whatever the case may be, whatever it wants to do. They have enough storage with this D-Wave computer. They have enough bits in... Okay, they have the storage capability in bits as there are subatomic particles in the universe.
Oh my gosh.
And they have this computer at their hands, at their behest, doing whatever it is that they want them to, that they want it to do. So the fact that the internet got scrubbed, for instance, of that information doesn't shock me. It's very easy for them to do it and very quick. Well, computers, again, normal computers, up until this quantum computer sort of advent, only did things basically one byte at a time. So with a quantum computer, they actually can do it in 4-bit increments. So they can have 4 different processes running at the same moment at the same time. And each one of those processes can, again, do those 4 different types of calculations. It's an exponential kind of computer. It's amazing what it can do, but it's also amazing at what it's absolutely capable of, changing wise and all of this kind of stuff. I mean, again, just imagine that enough bits available to it in storage as there are subatomic particles in the entire universe. That's just incredible to me.
Well, Carol, it plays into our 4 corners on the mirror that turns into 8, that turns into 12, that turns into, 24. As
there's
the mirror image.
Fibonacci sequence at play here, and there's Maxwell. I want to say Maxwell theory, but it's a set of numbers, and you need to look at a clock face. The faces of these clocks, the circle, if you will, of these Big Ben clocks, all these clocks around the world. Some of the secret groups will teach that you are the center of the universe. So I am the big zero. I'm a big fat zero. And I can go out into Fibonacci sequence and amplify my force field all the way around me, because that's exactly what each one of them are doing.
Yes.
They know the combination to this bad boy, and they got one of the numbers off. And that number needs to be fixed. And they know that because they fixed that number to bring in all the pilfering of the estates, the pirating, if you will. They use that number combination through the parentheses and the brackets that are been inserted into all the contracts, all the multi-state notes, everything. You see it in the court cases under the key case citations, which are literal warrants. That's what that means, that Westfall key case citation. It is a literal warrant. So they're inserting them into the court cases, and they're taking us all back to their Supreme Court cases to 200-plus years ago, and they're going back before the 1933 Bankruptcy Act, and they're using code words like the glove in the O.J. Simpson case, Cinderella. They're running like cases up through the state courts into the federal court now under the legacy system. So people need to read their briefs. In the state of Indiana used to be in the middle of the paper. It's right over with the plaintiff now. If you get sued, it says state of Indiana, and it'll say the county you're in, maybe in the middle, but usually it's over on what you would perceive to be the left-hand side of the paper looking down at it. But if you are the paper, it's on the right-hand side.
That indeed is Irish County, or Irish State, I should say. Yeah. And, man, I love it. Carolyn, Rene, you thought you'd get away early. I don't think so. Go ahead, folks.
something happened, didn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's all
I want to
knowledge.
slide back into the public and private here. When you get down to property, now you have certain property that they automatically presume is your public property, which would be like your motor vehicle, right? You want to turn this into private property, am I right? And to do that,
well,
how do you get
you just have to claim it as your private property because it is your private. Like your children are your private property. Your offspring are your property. Everything is your property unless it has a title to it. The title is the issue. The title is the paper that gives them, like the birth certificate gives them title. In CPS, the reason CPS can take anyone's offspring is because when they come to that door, they have the title. They have the birth certificate that they are attached to. So just like your car has a title, that's why they can tow it. That's why he can't really tow your truck unless the title comes back. You see what I'm saying? It has to be attached through the title or through paperwork. So.
Right. See, what I did was I changed ownership of it with the manufacturer, and I bypassed the whole title deal.
Well, see, then they couldn't tow your car anyhow because they'd never find it. Because you have the master title then.
Yeah, and it's also listed on my assets on the UCC1.
Okay, now what's interesting is what you just explained. A lot of people would not recognize what that means as the master title. That's the manufacturer's master title. That's the title that originally is issued for the car or the automobile. But what happens is the car dealers have been duped into thinking that they have to send that to the state. And what happens is the state destroys it. It goes on microfilm.
Yep.
So you cannot get that. Well, you can order a certified copy, but what you get is a certificate of title. You don't ever get the title because they maintain it on the microfiche at the state level. So what you did, and that's why I'm just explaining it, is you then accessed your manufacturer's title, and that's what comes with the automobile when it's made. It's the original, genuine paperwork.
Right. I gave them all the information for transfer of ownership. They know who I bought it from. So they had that recorded. But I recorded that I own it. I gave them all the information. And I have the application for the statement of origin. I haven't sent it in yet. But I do have the application for it. But, like I said, officially it has been changed with Ram Corporation or Dodge or whatever the hell they call themselves now.
Well, that's awesome. And you can do that at any time. It's just, I know we have a gentleman that told me a story about a motorcycle, and I can't remember who it was, but his family, years and years ago, his family built motorcycles and bought motorcycles, and one that his dad had the manufacturer's title, and it had never been, it was his. Well, the guy had it on him, and so he got pulled over, and the highway patrol asked for it, and he handed not knowing what he had, and the guy had to let him go. Because why? Because they had no claim to that motorcycle at all because of that manufacturer's original title.
Yeah.
And see, so this is a very simple, when we're talking about public and private, everything comes back to, as they say, if it has to be licensed, that would mean it would be illegal without it. Well, fishing isn't illegal without a license. It's just you're allowing them to license you and saying it's illegal if you don't have a license. All of these things with licenses, getting married. Wiley Drake, we were at the Hammond rally last month, and I met this couple who had been together 10 years and were so excited they were going to get married. And I looked at him, and of course, being I'm on the private side, I looked at him and I said, "You're not getting a license, are you?" And they thought I was nuts at first because they had claimed they were private. And I said, "Well, why would you do that?" And then I called Pastor Drake over, and he told the story about how he's gone to court and actually stood up. He had a lady who was a family was trying to take all of her inheritance because she and her husband didn't have a marriage license with the state, but Wiley had actually married the couple. They put it in the Bible. It was sealed. It was done properly. They were married in the eyes of God. Well, the judge himself asked him. He said, you know, they convened because the family was trying to say she wasn't married, and there was a lot of money on the line. They came back in, and the judge asked Wiley, he said, did you marry this couple? Wiley said, yes, I did. And then looked at the wife and the woman and said, were you married? And she said, yes, I was. And he said, show me. And they showed him the Bible, and he said, that's it. She was married. She gets the inheritance. So
right.
The trickery of licensing is to give money somewhere. We do not have to have all of these licenses and everything else, because all that does is give them permission for us to be their slave.
Isn't it like a merger? Isn't it like a merger with the state? And my friend Diana was giving me the definition of merger tonight, and it's where you drowned. Your right goes away when you merge with another.
Yes.
Yep. And that's exactly what it is. I was noticing with my certificate of live birth, mine's handwritten, but my sister's is typed. And the reason why is because I was never married. She was divorced twice. And every time they do that, they create a new merger. They take the two to one, you know what I mean? 2 into 1, yeah.
Well, and that's why when you rescind your power of attorneys and you rescind all of that, you include that. You can get your marriage certificates and, endorse them back.
Yeah.
And cancel them. Yeah, because even when you're divorced, you think you're divorced, but in the system, there's still a marriage. It's behind the scenes.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Or they'll give you a new name. They gave me the name of Coleman. I don't know who that is, but the fraud is so massive that if you go in and look at the paper files at the courthouse, you might catch a glimpse of the new name they gave you.
Yep, you just got to go through the documents and look for what is called, as Carol pronounced it, anchor dates. You go through and look at, what day were you born, your infant, what day was your son born, your daughter born, your husband born, what day were you married, what day were you baptized, all
what
of
day
this.
did you sign the loan for your house?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now that birth date, is that the date you're actually born, or is that the date the paper was submitted?
It could be both. It could be just like a title to a warranty deed or a deed to the house. It'd be the day that you signed at the title company closed, but then the day the recorder issued it as well. That has a different function, that recording date. It'll tie it to another like lot number. So you'll have them spread out exactly 1 year apart because they've got to have them the same day. And the years don't matter in the anchor date system. The anchor date is just that. It's based on the month and the day. Then the year system comes in at the Treasury Department. When they issue birth dates, it's done like this, 0101, and the year you were born, 1961. So it'd be 0101-1961. Oh, and my employee ID number, or the ID number they might use, might be 000-00-000. However, 4 zeros, your Social Security number, but it'll be 0. Zeros are not a number. And then those will tie into a lawyer's trust fund. That's how they're bringing it in on the backside.
And the key to simplify the born and birth is that if you look at your birth certificate and the date it was executed, like if you're born on the 1st, it may actually, your birth certificate may be dated the 2nd, and it'll have your born day on there, but the birth certificate will actually be dated a different date. So a lot of people, I've been told from people that they've gone into Social Security and done amendments, because when you go in and amend to the date of the actual birth certificate, sometimes it's different. And that'll completely take you out of the system as well, because then they can't attach it to you because your born day is different from that birthday.
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
Well, not only that, hey, Dana, you still here, man?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, Dana. Now, in regards to the signature that goes back to Caesar, can you drop in here and explain this to the folks, please?
The signature that you got to get me in my head right now. My head's not there right. The signature on Caesar.
Yeah, going back to the signature. Your signature.
Well, I know what you're talking about now. Okay, now I've caught up with you. All right, what the signature represents is a Roman slave. According to the old Roman law, yes. The signature is recognized as a Roman slave. That's why if you had a man, for instance, a centurion, he would have his ring, he would have his seal. So when he would, you might say, authenticate a document, he would take his ring and he would imprint it on there, and that would be the seal. Anybody who signed anything by their hand is considered a Roman slave under the Roman system. And when you really think about it, that's what we're under now. We're under the same system.
And that's why I know when we talk about autograph versus signature, anytime I'm asked to sign anything, like when I got a ticket violation, I crossed out signature and put autograph, and also I was told by a 30-year veteran of the Sheriff's Department to always put under duress over your autograph. Always. He said, always, always, always put under duress, because you are not autographing that because you want to.
Really?
So I always put V.C, which is also meaning under duress in a different term, and then above always write under duress, because that's why when they say, do you understand? I overstand. I do not understand. And I do everything under duress, and that's the same thing. Brian Watkins, I've heard him say it enough times when he says my honor, not your honor. My honor, when he's addressing the court.
Right.
It's very, when you start living in the private, start recognizing that you are over the public, you're not under. And when they say, do you understand? No, I overstand. I cannot understand legalese because I do not speak it. And the other thing I've been suggesting to people is, if you are in the arena where a black-robed priest, they call judge, the administrator, is telling you that you have to, have to do this, have to do that. Well, first of all, you always question jurisdiction. You don't question it. There is no jurisdiction. So you have you bring up the fact that there's no jurisdiction. And there's only one of two ways that black-robed could be addressing you. One is as a slave,
if you're dead,
and the other is a prisoner of war. So when you ask, under these conditions, in the event that you are going to proceed, how are you proceeding? Are you perceiving me as a prisoner of war or a slave? Because only one of the two of those may you proceed in this court proceeding.
You have to live this 100% when you're in the private.
You have to. And when you tell them, I do not speak legalese, and they try to tell you have to have an attorney, I do not need an attorney. I do not want representation. Assistance is by virtue of an interpreter. You have a right in any court to have someone interpret the language. So therefore, if they're telling, like in Nevada, they keep telling Mr. Bundy he cannot have Larry Klayman because he's not a licensed attorney, which we know there's no such thing as a license to practice law.
Right.
What I would say is, well, I do not want him as an attorney. I want him as an interpreter. I do not speak legally.
Use his own interpreter, because the interpreter services are being used on the international side to interpret our court cases in a totally different way, Rene. Instead of reading, like we talked about this, left to right, it's reading right to left on the flip side of this, and it's going clear over to other countries.
And that's why when we go in, if you get drugged into any court system like these men are in Oregon, and this parade of pretend public rear-enders, instead of taking a public rear-ender, take an interpreter, because that's what they are using in these systems right now. And you cannot speak legalese. You are not trained in legalese, unless you are. But I would definitely say I need an interpreter. I do not speak your language.
Oh, my God, Rene, that's beyond a shell game. Jesus, really?
just my thought. I mean, Carol and I, our thought is always look to the remedy. What makes something make sense? Well, legalese will never make sense to me, and I don't want representation. Just like Ryan Bundy said, I will not accept the representation, but assistance at counsel, because you do not want anybody representing you. Because if they do represent you, you're the belligerent. You are an indigent in the system.
Yep.
You have no rights. That's why those men with all those public rear-enders, they have no rights.
Well, it's no different. Okay, I got a football game against you guys, and let me grab the offensive coordinator from the other team. Hey, take a look at our playbook and tell me how can you help me out here? Come on, really? You're going to take the guy from the other team and bring him on your team. All righty then. I don't even think
right.
So.
You have a federal prosecutor. You have federal marshals doing the arresting. You have federal agents involved in the indictments and the arrest warrants. You have federal judges. You have federal prosecutors. You have everything is stacked against you. Even the defender is a federal defender because they're the ones footing the bill. When in essence, your bonds and everything off of your birth certificate and your surety is what's funding the whole charade. It's all a folly. It's a financial folly. And what they want is to put these men in jail because they put them in for life. This is a huge financial win. And they have and also in Oregon, there's another act that they're getting ready to put through. And it's going to cost millions of dollars. Where do you think they're funding this? They're funneling the funds through this court system to fund all of these acts that they're wanting to put through. The other thing is the districts. These men belong in Harney County. That's the district they belong in. There's no reason they should not even be in Portland. So they start, and that goes into what Carol and I were talking about on something else, which is the lateraling of prisoners, what it's called, not aliens. What's it called, Carol, when they lateralize the prisoners from federal prison to federal?
Oh, they're import-export. And let me say something real quick about these interpreters before I lose, because my phone's going to die, I'm afraid. These interpreter services here in your county commissioner meetings at budget time, they will try to hide the interpreter's fees, because I suspect if you folks are talking about getting interpreters, and this is just a thought, you're talking about getting interpreters instead of a lawyer, and you don't speak their legalese, well, they're the ones hiring interpreters because they never understand you, do they?
Nope.
Wait, but you can go in as a third-party intervener. You know that, right?
You can if unless you're me. They won't even want me talking at all. They're like, don't bring her into the case, no matter what.
And that's the thing. You can. You can under by law. You can by.
Right.
But the fact is, when you have. But the judge is the one who's acting under the color of law and being judge, conviction, and jury right there on the bench, which is all unlawful. There is not one court in this country who does not have tyranny.
He's cock-blocking everything. They cock-block it.
There you go with that word again.
I get a cuss on this show.
It's the word of the week. It's the word of the week.
Carol, go have it. It's a fact. Come on, man. Just let it roll.
I already did the other night on mine and Rene. We had a little show going on, and I called the Koch brothers or Koch brothers cock. I didn't know. I thought that's how
it was hysterical. I was trying to bring in another guest, and the whole time I'm dying laughing because she's going on, cock, cock, cock. And I've got all these people sending me messages. It's Coke.
Yeah.
Oh,
if I was
sorry,
a guy,
guys.
I'd want to have a name like that. I'd be like, I'm Carol Cock.
Yeah.
Oh,
anyway.
My battery, you mentioned your battery going dead. I just about had the same problem. I just hooked up my power inverter, so I'm charging it from my truck.
Yeah, mine's down to 14%, by the way, guys. So.
Yeah.
Hey, and I'm good to go here on my computer. Not to be a gloater, but you'll have that.
So,
well,
yeah,
I like to tell you,
they
words are interesting.
Yes, they are.
Carol and I did a show called The Devil's in the Detail, and I'll tell you, I messaged her the other day, and a couple of weeks ago, I said, "Dear Lord, Carol, that was magnificent. I listened to us, and I can't even believe how good it was." But it was The Devil's in the Detail, and we put every bit of our research that we had at the time out.
The Devil's Dictionary. They got a Devil's Dictionary, and it's the flip way of how. It's a flip way of looking at all these. Everything has the double meaning, right? So when they say, "This is unprecedented," when the president says, "This is unprecedented," he's telling us something. There's no president here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Dana, I had Dana look them up today. Post and box, for like a post office box. We looked at the definitions of post and box. And I'll tell you, they're pretty deceiving. They can be quite deceiving.
Well, that's why you have the U.S. Postal Service and you have the U.S. Post Office.
Don't forget the Post Hotel in Switzerland.
And your mailbox.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right. So the important thing with what you guys are saying is that, the English language has been pretty much bastardized. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. We have a situation where these words, all these different words, have so many different meanings, and the problem is that we as the people don't understand all the meanings in the ways that they do. They use them. They can use the same word in a different way, and you screw yourself by using the same word.
Different ways.
Charlie Manson is a serial killer. Oh, wait a minute. That's Tony the Tiger, isn't it? And Charlie Manson was never named Charlie Manson. His real name on his birth certificate, theirs is Charlie Maddox. See?
Right. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying, though, is that it's an important distinction to understand with all of this, is that the language that you use is absolutely essential. You have got to know what every single word means and use it very carefully.
Okay, and I'm going to interject something with this. What you just said, I want you to all think about something. What you just said was very boxing people in. I believe, and this is just my feeling, that the remedy here is that we get rid of the American Bar Association, because through the attorneys and these public servants who've had this training of law where they can deceive and argue, we should not have to say we have to know all these words. We don't.
Right.
That's a fallacy. Oh, I like that word, Carol. That's a fallacy.
We don't need to be foreign either, such as the bars.
Yes.
That is me.
Yes.
Fallacy, that's too funny.
Yes, exactly. I agree with you.
From Egypt or something with that phallus thing.
I agree with you 100%. That's for sure.
But we get rid of the ABA, which we should anyhow.
Yeah.
Because right now we know under the 13th Amendment, the attorneys are not supposed to be sitting as public servants, and Congress, senators, all of them.
It's filled with them.
When you look, if we win,
go to FARA and look up bar, AKA. Go ahead, I dare anybody. It'll come up for you, and wait till you see what's there.
Tell us, Carol.
Yeah.
Well, it's on a YouTube video. I'll send it to Ira, but it's Barack. I was looking at bar attorneys under FARA, and I thought, okay, Baraka's coming up, and I know that might be a common name, but I automatically thought about Barack Obama, which the other day at the press conference for Correspondents' Dinner, he said, "I'm going to leave you with my name," and it's 2 words, Obama. And that's what he said. And he said there was no republic, and that he was going to start working for Goldman Sachs after he left.
Yeah, he did it all as a quote-unquote joke, but the words that they use, he was literal.
Right, and under Baraka, I did a video on it. That's what came up for the any of the bar association. Now there were some places, Phillips and Baker and Daniels. The old Baker and Daniels is under working for the Queen, but under FARA, the only one that came up for the bar was Baraka, and it is out of Kenya, and it's tied to a lifetime sitting king, and it ties to Obama's healthcare system and immigrants and everything. So I did a video on it with all the links underneath of it. So I'll give that to you, Ira, because you'll like that.
Yeah, it's a really good one, Carol. It was really good.
I would definitely appreciate it.
So that's when it comes to us talking, it always comes down to what people say, well, what can we do? We're lost. No, we're not lost. You just have to get rid of what is causing the problem. And the problem we have is that we have attorneys who have taken over everything and saying and telling everybody you can't even represent yourself in court and have your own, like Mr. Bundy. He can't have Larry Klayman. Why can't Larry Klayman go in as next friend, which means Larry Klayman would have more knowledge of what Mr. Bundy needs to say than he does. So he goes in as a next friend as a special defense. Because the only thing legislated, the bar attorneys are not legislated. Private attorney generals are. By law, by the foundation, you just have to be learned in law to have a defense or to stand in court. To be learned in law just means you need to learn. It doesn't mean you learn man's law.
They are currently groomed on BS, such as the freight train. It's like, we're going to give you so much knowledge to continue on with the freight train, and heaven forbid somebody disrupts that, and guess what? We've arrived. Yeah. Exactly.
And that's, so to me, that's when and you can always tell when you run into a law enforcement, because they've become so robotic in their stance, in their arrogance, in their perversion of their bravado, like the one tonight. And you can always tell an attorney because they like to argue. I had one, and I'll tell you this story because I know many people feel this way. I had this gentleman, I was on a radio show, a television show actually, and when it was done, the attorney was sitting next to me. And I had been speaking about the birth certificate and how the Treasury has bonds and such. And behind me, he says, "Oh, that's baloney." And I turned around and I said, "Excuse me?" And he says, "Oh," and I said, "Well, actually, it's not. I have proof, and I can show you a check on the back." I said, "I had the IRS abscond with almost $3 million out of a Treasury account I didn't even know I had." And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, that's hogwash, blah, 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 blah. Prove it to me." And I looked at him and I said, and I stopped for a second and I said, "No, I don't think so." And I turned around. And he says, "What?" And I said, "Well, you're an attorney, right?" "Yeah." And I said, "Well, you know what I've learned is I don't want to fight and I don't want to argue. I'd rather debate something, but what I've learned about attorneys is all they know how to do is fight. So, no, I choose not to. But thank you. I'm glad for your interest." And I've still never to this day spoken to it about it to him again. Because we have choices. We can say, "No, thank you." Or do you want to sit and argue? As they say, would you argue with a drunk? How far are you going to get? How much sense does that make?
You argue with a cop?
Exactly. You don't.
Right.
Because they're always going to be right. That's
and they
it.
can lie about it, too.
Yeah.
They can lie to you.
It's called the ruse,
and
it's lawful. And actually, I think it was just this last year, Obama legislation was passed that the television news, which, as you may all know, is licensed under entertainment, they all now can lie to you without getting in trouble. There was legislation passed for the media to be able to lie with no repercussions.
Yes, and they also rescinded the rule that was put down after World War II that propaganda could not be used as a against the citizenry of the United States. They rescinded that ban about 2 years ago as well.
And that's when the FBI, if you look back, when the FBI issued the documents on sovereign citizen.
It was, yep.
Because there is no such thing as a sovereign citizen, but that's the propaganda. And since all of this is legislated, domestic terrorist, militant, sovereign citizen, constitutionalist, veteran, military veteran, these are all key words now that they can use against you because of that. The propaganda now can be used against you.
Absolutely
and that's
correct.
All of that is being used against the guys in Oregon.
Yep.
And the thing is, you bring their courts or their laws into court, and they don't recognize them. It's like they're totally breaking their own laws.
Well, there was one of the guys that was involved over there in Oregon. I just saw an article about this a couple of days ago. Rene, you might know more about this. His name's Graham. Graham, is it Seam?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, Gavin Syme.
Gavin Syme. Thank you. I'm trying to do it from memory. So, anyways, he came out talking about the fact that the FBI is now trying to deny him the right to have a firearm, and that what they're doing basically is, he had to fill out a lot of paperwork and all the kind of stuff that goes along with that. The place that he was trying to buy the gun through said that the paperwork was delayed. His application was delayed. They can't sell him the gun. He then called the FBI, who told him that they can delay the transaction for up to 3 days. And then if the store doesn't hear back from the FBI within those 3 days, the store can then sell him the firearm. But then if the FBI later comes back and tells that store after that 3-day period that the purchase was denied, then it's up to the retailer to seek out and get back the firearm that was purchased. And then they add in basically that, let me see here, trying to find the article here. Okay, so the FBI told him on a recorded call saying, one of the federal prohibitors is that if you've been convicted of a misdemeanor for more than 2 years, then you can be denied the right to have that firearm. As opposed to what their own regulations say.
Again, that's their own. That's man's made up rules and statutes and codes, because the Second Amendment has nothing to do. I don't care who you are when you say, "Oh, this person shouldn't have a gun, that person shouldn't have a gun." Well, you know what? I don't believe that. I'm sorry. If you're a felon and you've served your time, you've done it.
Yeah.
You gave your time to what you did wrong. And I know that may make some people mad, but what do you take his dinner fork away too? Do you take his knife away?
It's not only that, Rene, but as well, if you are convicted of a felony, you no longer have the right to vote. And yet if you go and get a job, you have to pay taxes. That's representation, or taxation without representation. Because you're not allowed to vote. And
originally voting, anyhow, if you go back into when voting started, it was all about land. Yeah. If you own land, you had a vote. If you didn't, you didn't vote, because it was he who owned the land that controlled everything. Hence why they're stealing all the land again. But people believe that everybody has a right to vote. Well, guess what? Voting is for the citizenry. That's the U.S. citizen, which is, once again, doesn't matter, because the vote is for the CEO of a corporation. So basically, how many corporations you can walk into, like McDonald's has a corporate structure? Okay, you as someone who buys their hamburger can go in and tell them, you know what, you guys I can suggest to you what you should do. But you know what, that goes into a suggestion box. They actually do what they want to do, don't they, through their board of directors, just like the United States of America Corporation.
They do indeed.
So when all of this is said and done and people say, oh, these courts, they can't do what they're doing, they're breaking the law, well, actually they're not. Because those men and women in that court are being seen as the U.S. citizenry, which is under the 14th Amendment, civil employees of the corporation. And that corporation, if you're going to work for it, and you work for McDonald's, do you think if McDonald's calls you in and says you're fired, you're going to be able to fight that as much as you may think it's wrong? No. Why? Because you work for McDonald's, and they can tell you when you're going to come or go.
Right.
This is what time you get up. This is what time you come to work. This is what. So that's what the courts are running off of right now. They're not courts of law. They're administrative courts of business.
Right. There's a definite important distinction between those. We need to wrap
our head around the fact that everything we believe is not what's going on inside that court.
And
they're doing everything they're doing because they can.
They were ruled unconstitutional last year.
Well, the Constitution wasn't written for you and I. The Constitution was written to limit government. So there's confusion there, too. So when you're going into,
administrative course right across the
Well, they're
area.
doing.
Well, the whole thing is we don't belong there. There's no jurisdiction, and as Rene states very clearly, our friend Rene, Carol and I have.
That's absolutely correct. We do not belong there. We don't out
belong
of their
there.
jurisdiction. Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah.
So, and Carol and I are going to be doing a series with Rene. He's the native sovereign. He's wonderful, and he's really brought a new twist into things for most people. He has the ability to get that black robed priest panties in a twitch. So we're gonna. Oh, now I said panties, Carol. We're having a good time. It must be getting late.
Remember, the black robe means they put that on and worship the dead, but I'm sorry I said that, but go ahead.
Well, we have this situation.
They're black robe priests is what they are.
Right.
That's what they are. They're not judges.
And we have this situation where you walk in, and if you walk past that little barrier, that little fence that's right there, you walk into their territory. It's like the whole serfdom and fiefdom thing. You're literally right there,
It's the complete courthouse.
Yeah.
It is when you walk in through those electronic, where you go through the thing. Denny Fick, my friend from here in Indiana, the judge told, I was an audience member in the audience, and I got up to leave, and he said, "Sit back down, ma'am." I said, "I will not. I'm leaving." He said, "Sit back down." And I said, "I will not. You don't have any honor in your courtroom." I said, "You're letting fake mortgages run through these cases." And I left. Well, those sheriffs brought me back up. So
I love it.
So, well, It's on the record. It's on the record, but the deputy sheriff brought me back up. And Denny was in there, and some other people from Fort Wayne, and my husband and another guy, and that deputy barred us leaving the courtroom. Now, people can say we can do whatever, we can do this or that, but when I walk through that electronic surveillance system, they're actually taking custody when we give them consent to search our body.
Right. You walked into their bailiwick. Yeah.
It says it right on the wall. There's a plaque. If you look when you go into a court, like when you go into the federal buildings, there's a plaque on there. You no longer you're in their room. This is you have just come into. You have no rights. Your rights are stripped of you as soon as you walk through that door.
Well, yeah, without a signature. Yeah.
Right. And what happened to Carol? That's kidnapping. When you hold someone without, that's kidnapping. So this is the good news to me, and this is, again, just an opinion, is I believe, because as we're talking on this call, this is no longer an anomaly. This is what the calls are all about now. This is what all the radio shows are about. This is what conversations are about when you're sitting in a restaurant. You hear someone talking about, "I can't believe they did that to them in that courtroom," or "I can't believe that police officer just tried to write me a ticket," or "I can't believe they just hit that kid in the head." These are things that people are saying, enough. We've seen too much of it. It's become personal. Someone loves has had their home stolen, their land, or their life. And when they assassinated Leroy Finicum on Highway 395 in Harney County, that was the fire, that was the shot heard around the world. Jackie Yuntus was murdered because of his bull, not many months before that. We have children being murdered in CPS and children disappearing, lost to the shadows.
Yeah.
It's personal now. It's happened to too many. Their greed and their need to have us as slaves has awoken the sleeping giant, and it's happened. It's happening now.
It has.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
It has. I mean, and with the unemployment rate where it is, people have had time to research, and they're out there looking for stuff, and they're finding it. We're at a turning point. We're at a very big turning point in history.
It's definitely a crossroads, that's for sure.
I'd like to say that we're a good part of it. I'd like to say that we're a key factor here.
And what's exciting is if you think back to when Kennedy was assassinated back in '63, he had plans in place, financial plans, that by, I think it was 1974, if I'm not mistaken, every household, every family, now remember we're saying family because in the 60s It was mother, father, children.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
So every family was to have one parent working, and that parent was only going to have to work 10 hours a week. Because why? Because that birth certificate trust was set up to take care of us so that our family could prosper, our families could be healthy, our needs would be met. And I love going back to, if you're a Dubaian, and anyone who knows someone who's a Dubaian, you know their bills are paid. Every 2 years, everything's offset. They have no victim, no crime, so they have true peacekeepers. So the police don't stand on corners and yell and arrest people.
They zero out every 2 years?
Pardon?
They zero out every 2 years?
Yes. They reset. Unless you have a victim in a crime, then you might as well forget it because you're going to be in huge trouble. One of my son's friends that was traveling with them when they went for work a year ago, he dropped his wallet and he couldn't find it. They backtracked a few days to find his wallet.
All right.
It was found in the same place he dropped it, in the street, getting out of the taxi cab.
Amazing.
And when he went to pick it up, he was surrounded, and this is a true story. He was surrounded by other people, and they made him prove that that was his wallet. And if that wasn't his wallet, he would have probably been dead right there on the street. Because you are accountable for your crimes. And that's the thing. No victim, no crime, have a good day.
That's what we
but
need
if you
here.
Create a victim, you're going to be held accountable.
Isn't that kind of, if you go back in time, isn't that kind of what it was like in the Old West here?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've said for years that we need to get to an Old West style of justice back here in America.
We're getting there. We are getting there. We have, people can laugh and they say, oh, these are fake judges, these are fake marshals, these are fake. Well, guess what? Everything in that arena on the de facto is truly fake because they are dressing up these men who murdered Lavoy Finicum. They were wearing uniforms with patches that had Velcro. Now, I don't know about any of you, but if you ever spent time growing up in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, troops of any kind, you had to sew those patches on.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So when we call them the ABC soup agencies, if you see, now I saw a show, a newscast, and they had a man in a helicopter, and they were talking about America, about the United States. Well, the helicopter shot they were showing, the guy flying it, he had a uniform on, and they were very clear to show it was a United States flag. But the thing that caught my eye was it was a patch that was Velcroed. There was no stitchery on it.
Really?
So there was more trickery in the broadcast. Because if they are not sewn on, they're changing those patches left and right.
Yep.
I don't know how you caught that, Rene, but God love you.
We've got, just to let you guys know, we've got about 3 or 4 minutes left here. So just want to give you guys fair warning on time here.
Yep.
All right. Well,
when you're in the United States military, you got to sew all your patches on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So why do we have so why are so many wearing patches? Because you know why? In my belief, because of the private military contractors here in America, the Russians, the French. We have a friend 3 months ago who was thrown out of her home, her and her family, in Aurora, Colorado, street lined with brand new cars with registration in the window. The Russians were in. They didn't speak English. The sheriff was assisting. The police officer that showed up laughed and said he'd vouch for him when they wouldn't show ID. They were throwing all the furniture out. And just a few weeks prior to that, a judge in the court had actually said it was her home. The debt collectors had no standing. And to this day, her and her family are still out of their home. They're never going to get it back.
Yep.
We have Russian mercenaries on the ground in America, private military contractors working for debt collectors like Select Portfolio Servicing, who are involved with Canadian stock transfers and going over to the Virgin Islands. We've caught them red-handed. It's time it ends. We need to get rid of the Bar Association. get back to man's law, natural law, stand as the living, and do business if we choose to contract, not forced commercial intercourse.
Right. We need to get a committee of safeties set up nationwide.
Agreed.
Agreed.
And the militias, the well-regulated militias, with the safety committees and their own publications, so that it can properly be executed, so that people have a place to go, so that they can mediate without having to be arrested before even having a chance to right a wrong.
Good heavens, that would be like having an ambassador here currently as we speak, for our own good. Am I wrong?
Right. No, I agree completely. No victim, no crime, but I'll tell you what, you create a victim, you're going to do the time.
That's right.
And your peers are going to be the ones that tell you what it is.
And that's the way it's supposed to be.
Satisfied. If you and I have a problem and we work it out, the only time something's a crime is when someone calls it a crime.
Right. In the face here, sir. Face to face.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it's done.
Yes,
all right. Carol, when you get a chance, call me. All right.
Yeah, I don't want to. I want you to call me. Do you got my phone number? Because I'm worried about you going home. You need to be talking to somebody.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm talking to Dana right now in regards to that.
I'll talk with. I think I have your number in here, Carol. We'll just talk on the phone.
Yeah, you don't leave in that automobile without having that phone on in your lap or something.
Well, I was going to say, after the show's over, we can all stay connected. If you want to try to drive, I can stay connected with everybody here.
There we go.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Well, I'll be here for you. I'll have everything recording, too. So.
Well, he may want to take another course. We don't want to force you to travel.
Yeah.
If you don't have to.
Oh, are you kidding? The place I'm staying, with a good picture number, I could hit it. So it's not far down the road.
That works.
Better look all the way around, because he's sitting around the block waiting. They don't have anything else to do.
Yep. Small town, they're bored.
He's not getting donuts, I know that.
Small town, they're bored. That's what they do.
Yeah, Barry, you parked in a Dunkin's Donuts just waiting on the cops, didn't you?
Oh, I'm in the parking lot behind and I'm watching it. Oh, yeah. I'm watching it. I know where they go.
Guys, we're pretty much out of time here, but is there any kind of final words you guys want to have?
Thank you.
I think, Ira, you're awesome. Thank you again for programming this. I really appreciate it.
It's definitely my pleasure.
Yes, you don't have to send me a check. Don't worry about it.
Indeed, it's been a fantastic show in regards to the current situation. Believe me when I tell you that, and it hasn't stopped here. But good heavens, Rene and Carol, you gals were awesome. Awesome as usual. That was round 2, and we will indeed have another round with your girls if you're up to it. And anyways, our next goal is to make sure Papa gets home in a safe fashion. Otherwise, fantastic.
All right, guys.
Thank you, guys. God bless.
Thank you.
I'll let you guys know, too. The archive for this show is going to be found at lnmradionetwork.com. That's the audio version of it. We're also going to have it at YouTube. It'll be youtube.com/C/Open Eyes Network, and you guys can listen to the archive of the show in either place. Thanks for having me here, guys. I definitely appreciate it.
You're awesome.
Thank you.